Order. Today is Tuesday, February 26, 2026. It is 6 p.m. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I bet you can see right over my head. Yes.
All right. Are there any changes to the agenda as proposed?
Mayor, I need to call in a roll first.
Please call roll.
Vice Mayor Marriott,
Here.
Commissioner Robinson,
Here.
Commissioner Riznicki,
Here.
Commissioner Maldonado,
Here.
and Mayor Petrilla.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right. Are there any amendments to the agenda?
I have one to add. An item of discussion, public-private seawall partnership.
Okay. Are there any other amendments?
I'll add an item as well. It has to do with kind of a SOP for permitting to discuss.
Okay. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda as amended?
I make a motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
I second.
City Clerk, if you'll please do a roll call.
Vice Mayor Marriott,
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson,
Yes.
Commissioner Riznicki,
Yes.
Commissioner Maldonado,
Yes.
and Mayor Petrilla.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to presentations. Mike Twitty. Oh, there he is.
Perfect timing.
Mr. Twitty, perfect timing. Welcome. So our first presentation is by our Pinellas County property appraiser, Mr. Mike Twitty. Thank you, sir, for coming out this evening.
Sorry if I gave anybody a scare. But thank you for teeing this up, and thank you for having me in. Really just wanted to run through everybody's been still out here on the Barrier Islands in particular, trying to find ways to recover. And we've got a lot of resources on our website. We've been still helping people through that process. And we have a couple of new things, so I wanted to make sure that we could share those with you. So you can see there's a lot of red arrows pointing in different places. So those are some of the many places on our website where you can find some of those resources and information. We also have a lot of information on our YouTube channel as well, where we've gone over and done kind of after the storm answers and things like that. Lots of FAQs. We have two different sections, a storm-related FAQ section that if they go in there, it'll pretty much answer probably 98% of the potential questions they might have most of the time. We do obviously have some anomalies that we run into, but it addresses everything from use of the FEMA letters to our new building value reconsideration process, how the calamity provision works that allows people to effectively repair or rebuild their homes and keep the protection of their Save Our Homes cap so they don't get treated as new construction, which is a huge savings for people. We're going to get into a little more detail on that. And then obviously on preserving your homestead, if you're having to, say, demolish and rebuild a home, you want to make sure you keep that homestead intact through that process. And we'll touch on that some more. And then, of course, we have other FAQs, which are general ones on a variety of topics. So January 1, we get a lot of questions about, as we went from 2024 coming out of the storms that we had, how we were going to value for January 1 of 2025. And that would, always think of January 1 as our snapshot at the property appraiser's office. That's always our effective date of value. Even though we can't roll our values out on January 1, that's just the point in time that we're looking at data up until. So we're usually looking at the data in the prior year that really is the driver for where we're going to settle on our January 1 numbers. We'll usually put some additional weight on fourth quarter sale information. because you're getting closer to the January 1, and there's some time trending that occurs there. That's all part of the rules of the road that we have to follow in working with Department of Revenue. So that January 1 is critical. So I'm going to show you in a minute. Let's see. Well, let me back up. So if you on that January 1, we ran into a lot of properties that were essentially abandoned, but we might not know that at the time. So we were trying to keep our communication up with the public so we'd understand, are you planning to repair and return to the home? Are you struggling with a substantial damage determination situation? Are you planning to, rebuild the home or voluntarily elevate and to, above base flood elevation? And then you would qualify for the calamity provision. All those different scenarios, we were facing, which led to us putting out this storm damage survey, which I think was a precursor for y'all reaching out. I think that's part of the reason Lisa reached out to me, so I appreciate that. So this was really to help get a good snapshot image for us as of the January 1 for 2026. So we tried to make it super simple. This hasn't, we made sure not to put the word permit in it, because we're just trying to understand condition at this point in time, so we know which direction people are planning to take their property, because then it helps us guide them. If they want to take advantage of the calamity provision, we want to make sure they keep their homestead in place. If it was a homesteaded property, that's going to give them the best bang for the buck, because they can rebuild up to 130% of the original square footage. If they're a non-homesteader, it's 110%. And we'll show that here in a second. So we asked those, few simple questions. This survey was sent out by mail to properties that we believed had suffered storm damage, and then we also posted it online. So we've had lots of people just jump online and take the survey real quick with us. The other thing that it really helped is it helps us because we had to write down so many structures that were damaged. So when we went from January 1 of 2024 to 2025, a lot of those structures had water in them, had not been repaired yet. And so we put extra depreciation on a lot of those structures and really brought those structure values down. Well, the downside of that is it brought down the structure values on their FEMA letters. So we had a lot of people calling us saying, wait, yes, I had damage, but I don't want my FEMA letter that low. I said, well, it's okay, use your 24 letter, don't use the 25, you need to use the pre-storm letter. And then if you need to, you can reach out to us and we can do that reconsideration process, which is that building value reconsideration. So this is important for those that have now, got their structures put back together, they've returned to, pre-storm condition. We want to make sure we're able to restore that remove that depreciation, restore that value back. It's not going to affect their taxes because they're still under their cap, but that way we can get that value back into their structure. In the event of, something else happening, they've got some assurance there that they've got that value back. So one of the things we did to help in that process too is traditionally we've had that FEMA letter on the site as just a one-shot deal. And I said, we're going to have a problem. We need to continue to keep that 24 letter on until people get put back together, because we need to be able to access that. So that's the way it's designed. And if we need to add future years as we go forward, we'll figure that out. But people can access the 24 and 25 on there if they need to. The 26 letters won't be out until we hit about the middle of July. Those will post to the website. So then they'll have updated structure numbers for January 1 of 2026. And if they do if anyone goes on there to look, it gives you guidance on when to use the 24 versus the 25, depending on your scenario. So the building value reconsideration, that was a process that we devised to help people. We knew that once people were damaged, in the volume of homes that had water in them, there weren't enough real estate appraisers in our market to service that. And I recognize that being in the private sector for many decades as an appraiser, so I knew it was going to be a problem. So I tasked our crew with, let's come up with a way where we can see if we can come up with a process that's manageable, but that can help a lot of people get back on their feet quicker and not have to go outside and engage a private appraiser because they're going to be overloaded anyway. There's going to be plenty of work. So that was the process we came up with. It allowed us to work with them. They presented pre-storm documentation, might be contractors' invoices, photographs, those types of things. The photos were where the real gold was for us. We really needed pre-storm photos that we could, justify were before the storm. And we could look at those, and because we don't see through walls as it is now, we're making our inspections from the outside predominantly and looking at photos online and MLS photos, things like that, when we're updating some of those quality and condition calls. This gave us that window into the interiors that allowed us to make some adjustments and sometimes adjust their effective age. And then that worked for probably 80 to 85% of the properties we reviewed had some form of upward movement in their structure value, and that helped over 1,000 people be able to get back in just through that process. Another thing that we ran into, I was on a bunch of roundtable calls with some of the, with all the building officials during some of the post-storm recovery. And we started running into issues where a lot of homeowners held their property in a trust. And they were trying to pull owner-builder permits because the contractors were all backed up. And they might not have had a lot of water in, and they might have been pretty handy themselves, and they thought they could, cut a little drywall and replace their baseboards and that type of thing. They didn't have water up over their outlets, and they weren't able to do that. And then they started getting some bad advice, like, well, just change your deed. And that was not good legal advice. So I started running this up the flagpole with them, and we vetted it. And I said, we're already vetting people that file for homestead. And if you look down the checklist of the requirements to be able to pull an owner-builder permit, we're able to verify a lot of that in-house ourselves and take that burden off the building departments. So that we put that out there to all the building officials, and at first we thought we were going to get a bunch of pushback, and they all started latching on and said, yeah, that's great, that works for us. So that's helped a bunch of people get back in their homes as well, too. So moving on to the calamity provision. So we've touched on this several times already. It's come up. But state law changed on June 26th of last year, that before both homestead and non-homestead fell into that non-homestead column there, the 110. And if your home was under 1,500 square foot, you could always go to 110% or 100 or 1,500 square feet, whichever was greater for them. And they had a 3-year window from the January 1 post-storm to pull a permit to start the rebuilding process. That law was changed for homesteaders. It was increased now to 130% or 2,000 square feet, whichever is greater. So more runway for people there. Obviously, there's a big expense in rebuilding just the foundation and elevation portion of a structure these days is a huge financial commitment. So those were some of the tweaks the legislature made in order to give people a little more grace there, which I think were good ones. And they have a 5-year window now for homesteaders from January 1, post-storm. The most important thing is, if you were a homesteader when you were impacted, please do not remove your homestead. You can go buy another house and live in it. That's fine. But don't homestead it. Just leave your homestead where it is. We try to help people through that process. We pick up on demo permits, things like that. That triggers a letter that we send out to the homeowner telling them, please keep your homestead intact if you intend for this to be your homestead going forward, and give them the appropriate guidance. But that's probably the biggest takeaway there, is if you are taking that down and planning to move somewhere else temporarily, just don't move your homestead. And to help in that process, we just rolled out, this just stood up last week. It was referenced in that survey that it was coming soon, but we have a new online tool. A lot of people have used our tax estimator for when they're buying a new property, so they can see what their tax liability might look like as a new homeowner because of that Save Our Homes cap reset for so many. But I wanted to put a tool out there that would give people, allow them to run scenarios so they can work with their builder and they can play with the square footage. So they can put in their living square footage, they can put in their porches, and they can put in the area below base flood elevation at grade. And it's got all the parameters built into the back end. It knows whether they were a homesteader or a non-homesteader. Now, the one anomaly is if they just bought the property in '24 before the storm. And if they change the status, then they really need to call our office, because the tool can only do so much, and that's a little anomaly there. I will say it is designed for single family only that has one structure on a parcel. If it's a multi-building structure, they really need to call our office, and it's baked into it. They'll get a splash page that'll come up. Let's see. Oh. That looks like so. That will say, this tool is not suitable for the following reasons, and it may be that there's multiple structures. It might not be a single-family residential property, and then it's got the issue with the ownership change. So those can be reasons why it's not working quite right for them, and they can just call our office and we can walk through the calculation with them at our office. So portability after the storm. So for those, and unfortunately we do have many that are leaving our communities, and some of it's a time of life thing, and many don't want to reinvest, and it's a big, huge commitment, and some are moving closer to other family, and there's every scenario under the sun, right? We've all lived it. But for those that are staying within the state of Florida, they do have a 3-year window to port any of that Save Our Homes benefit from one property to their next homestead. So, and it's calculated a little different. They get a little more grace than they would. Normally, if you sell a property, you get 3 years from the January before that sale. That's because it runs on a calendar year, not from the date you sold the property. So you have to go back to the January 1, you do a 3-year calc, and as long as you've acquired your next homestead before that third January 1, you can qualify. The clock doesn't start till the January 1 after the storm. So you get a full 3 years after the storm if you were impacted. So it gives them a little more grace there. And this is kind of outside of my lane, but I just want to remind people that the program that the county set up, the People's First Hurricane Recovery Program, there are 5 different assistance programs that they can help citizens with, and it applies to all jurisdictions except the city of St. Petersburg, and that's because they have their own programs there, and they received a different pot of funding. And I was just reading that there is still funding available in those programs. So, I think I saw there was it 20, maybe it was 3,600 applicants, something like that. I think there's still a lot of bandwidth there within the program. So, and the income limitation is generally up to 120% of area median income per household. So encourage people to check that out. There's kind of the breakdown on people that have applied through the various programs. So you've got a couple here, a couple hundred that have applied here on St. Pete Beach. These are just a couple of other informational items for your citizens. We do educational series through the property appraiser's office. We're pretty much doing them on an every other month basis now. We used to do them religiously monthly, but we've put so much material out there over the last several years on our YouTube channel that it started almost flooding the zone too much. So we started to space them out a little bit, and we're always looking for new topics and things that we can interject. So if anybody has suggestions, we're happy to tackle those. But there's just a sampling of some of the different programs we've done in the past. And then we've got e-newsletters, and we're on social media and things like that. So, please engage with us there or follow us. If we can be of help, we try to put timely information out there that's relevant to what's happening now. It might be related to exemptions deadlines, but it might be, storm recovery information, things like that too. And the thing I'll leave you with, this is not from our office, but we promote this probably more than they do, because we get more opportunities to, and this is through the clerk of the court's office. And they have a property fraud alert service that is free. You've probably heard many advertised on the radio or on television. Well, this one you can take about a minute and go to that propertyfraudalert.com and go to the Pinellas drop down and enter your name, and you will get an email with the link to the OR booking page of any documents that go through the clerk's recording system. So you can check it out and make sure it's okay. It's great to even use during the recovery process because notices of commencement get recorded, satisfactions of mortgage, new mortgages, and if you've got friends or family members that you're watching out for, especially our seniors, our parents, grandparents, important to keep an eye on them. And this is a great way to do it because they're typically the most vulnerable because they have the most equity in their properties. So I encourage you to take advantage of that service. I use it myself, and it's been a great help. And that's all I've got for slides for you tonight, but happy to answer any questions anybody may have.
Commissioners? Thank you, Mr. Twitty.
Sure.
Yes, thank you very, very much. Appreciate it on behalf of the full commission and the community as well for coming out to speak with us.
Absolutely.
Do you know if the clerk has one for contractors? We need that. We had quite a few instances with issues with that, so I'll follow up with the clerk and see if they have anything.
Yeah, I don't think they do.
Another good tool. I have a few questions. Acceptable documents and photos for BVR. I've had a few people tell me, they lost virtually everything,
Right.
and older couples too, photos, all that, not much in the digital realm that they had.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any suggestions or advice you'd give to those folks on what they can do?
Some of them they've been able to, go in and dig out out of old MLS photos, old online listing stuff, some of that. But even recently, a lot of the MLS photos, they've started to make those go away where you're only seeing, after the sale, you're only getting one shot, and it's usually an exterior. We do have a little better window into that than just straight online public, but sometimes it can be difficult. I mean, we tell them, really think hard. Do you have pictures where your grandkids were at your house for celebrating their birthday party? And you're hanging out in the kitchen. We try to really go the extra mile on that, but we have to have something.
Okay, so a suggestion would be ask your family members what they have, if they have anything.
Right,
Okay.
exactly, because
And
they might not have it, but their children might have it when they were over at their house.
And y'all are happy to accept that as stuff. Okay, good.
We don't mind
good
if
to
there's a
know.
Christmas tree in there or, a birthday cake, that's okay. And, if they want to blur out faces or any of that, that's fine too. So.
Okay, great. Good to know because I have had a few people and primarily older population of that. So again, we're looking at that. And then for the calamity provision, it's residential only. How does that deal with anything? Is there any commercial on that? Or you have that fine line on, I guess, some communities, duplexes, residential, triplex is not? I mean, where is the line on that?
Yeah, so your commercial is going to fall under your non-homestead, and so are, your rental type properties, so your duplex, triplex, unless you had, so if you, say you have a duplex, let's use that as an example, and you own it and you're homesteaded on one side, okay? So it'll get the 130%, and then the one you rent will get the 110.
Okay. Worst case situation is a commercial property would get 110.
Correct.
Okay. Good to know. And again, that's the 3-year, which is nice to see that. And it's also really nice to see that up for the homestead to the 130. Appreciate that.
Yes.
That was nice. Then going to the FEMA letter, effective date-wise, if you were affected with a 2004 storm, then you fall into 2004. If you didn't do repairs, let's say, and the 2005 storm hits, where does your valuation fall? Does it fall still before the 2004, or does it fall under the 2000 where you're currently at?
Right.
And if you haven't done repairs, I'm asking this question pointedly because, as you know, there's probably a lot of people in communities that haven't done anything as of yet, and we are coming up to another storm season. So I just want to put that out there to be perfectly clear under where they would fall in case there was another storm and where they're
Right.
at.
And in my opinion, it would be the 2024 because that reflects the pre-storm value. The 2025 is going to have been written down for the structure damage, so you don't want to use that.
Okay.
And I know we've had to talk to some building departments about that because they wanted to always grab the most recent one. That was part of the reason we stood that up and put very explicit kind of rules of the road on it as far as how we interpret the use of that.
So it would be fair to say that, say, the initial damage, based on the initial damage, storm damage, it would be that year that would
Yes.
apply?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
good to know. Thank you. That's a big relief. I think that's all I have for now. I greatly appreciate, thank you for coming out.
You're welcome.
I don't know if will you take questions from our audience as well?
Sure.
Or some? Okay.
Sure.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Maldonado?
Yeah, again, thank you, Mr. Twitty, for coming out. I just wanted to pass along praise and appreciation for the responses from your staff immediately following the hurricanes. There was a lot of confusion regarding the values, devaluing, and in some cases, people buying homes, and it actually being appraised much higher. But they were incredible, very responsive. I was looking for the name of the employee. I'll email you with that. But
Okay,
thank
great.
you so much for that, sir.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'd be remiss if I didn't give my staff a lot of great kudos as well because they had to endure a lot. It's been a lot of extra hours and some of them were directly impacted as well, and they continued to work through that process while they were repairing and trying to put their lives back together too. So I would give them a lot of credit.
Thank you. Commissioner Reznicki?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Twitty, for coming here and presenting this information to our community. I do have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Because I'm not quite sure if this matters or not, but pre-storm value, I know you're saying by 24, of the year of 24, but how about for those who had pre-storm before that? People in this city, for example, in certain neighborhoods, specifically the Don Cesar subdivision, had 2 prior storms to Helene, Etta, and Idalia. Are those considered? Because they were significant.
Right. Yes, we had to deal with some of the Idalia damage as well. I ran into that before we ever came up with the BVR process. It was one of the precursors to us developing that, was dealing with some Idalia damaged people, because that was 23. Then here we were into the summer of 24 and coming up towards Helene. They had already fully repaired their homes, and then Helene came along and hit them. And we had written their structure down to, minimal numbers. So it wasn't enough for them to recover, and that's when we started the BVR process. So it really first started with Idalia. That was kind of our test case, and those property owners, again, they showed us the work that was going on. They had documentation of the photos going along the way, and then what it looked like when it was, done or almost done. So we knew that they had made that investment back in there, so we were able to use that.
So it is there then, right? Correct?
Yes.
And then the other question, and I had to pull up the picture because a resident shared this with me, and several, this is just one I have a picture of. There was a letter sent out from Pinellas County Property Appraiser, your office, to residents that live here on St. Pete Beach. The subject is requests for storm damage property condition status. And so my question is, why are some homes here on St. Pete Beach receiving this letter and not all? And what is the purpose of this letter?
Yeah, so I showed that one slide of it earlier. So it had a couple of purposes. We wanted to try and because we can't see through walls, we don't know if some people have cut their walls. We don't know if they've made that repair. Unfortunately, not everybody pulls a permit, so we don't always know everything that's gone on. And so we were making that request, allowing them to self-report if they so desire. We had additional depreciation on those structures, those particular ones. Those are ones that we had in our information that had taken some sort of water. And then that was allowing us, if they're put back together, to remove that extra depreciation and restoring their structure value, which would then help them on their FEMA letter as well. So it had a couple of purposes for us to try and get that good snapshot on January 1. And we knew there really wasn't any other way to get that in mass than to conduct a survey like that.
And then why some and not the whole city? Because our city also sent out letters similar to those, and this one has
Okay.
a March 1st deadline. So I'm just not understanding why, like I didn't receive one, yet I had damage in my home, so I'm not sure why I
Okay.
didn't and someone did.
Well, I will have to check with my staff, but my understanding was that was based on the data set that we had at that time that went out. So, or maybe it also, had you already communicated with our office about your property?
Using this letter, no.
No, not using the letter, but in any other way. Because some people, we already knew information on a lot of other properties that had already repaired. Had you already repaired your home?
As of today, yes, but when this letter, so yes, but my communication has been through the city of St. Pete Beach, not through
Right.
Pinellas County.
Right, but anything we'd picked permits up on, things like that, we
So then you
removed those
see it.
from the list.
Okay, so if a permit had been already obtained,
Right.
then you might have not sent a letter to someone in
Yes.
that sense. Okay. Thank you.
Very similar to what we're doing.
Sorry.
Okay. Do we have any audience comments on this particular issue?
John Kurzman.
Mr. Twitty, if you don't mind, we'll just take all the comments and then
Sure.
they can ask those questions, and if you want to come back afterwards and.
That's fine.
We have a microphone over there.
Huh?
Or actually, this is not about.
He's coming back, John.
Okay.
Could you zoom
If you'll
down?
please state your name and address for the record.
But first, I want to make sure they can scroll down right to the screen, not the keyboard, because I want them to see the screen. Thank you very much. My name is John Kurzman, B.E. Honda Way, St. Pete Beach. Thank you. So thank you, Mr. Twitty, for your great presentation and your great website. So the website shows that beachfront properties, this is what this is about, pay for the wasteland and marsh and sand dunes at one low rate, and then the hotel and motel at another rate, and not for the sandy beach at all. And when I spoke to you at a meeting that we were at together, you actually mentioned that these properties are taxed as beachfront. And it already skipped a slide. And then you could see, for instance, the green area or the red area that is typically on the website as well. The tax assessor does not consider a specific portion of Sandy Beach as owned by the high water line. He just considers it a beachfront owner, or the department does. Okay, here's another example, another property, same situation, but then they're starting to put signs up. Now, this one's been removed, partially perhaps, but these, are untaxed areas of the beach, even if they may be on someone's deed. Now we're seeing, like as of this week, 4x4 posts being inserted in the water with holes that look like they're ready for the ropes when you continue on. And if you look carefully at the one in the distance, they're even past on the outside of the weed line from high tide. And we have a lot of institutions that are claiming this is a private beach, this is private property. If you're coming here, you either rent our stuff or go sit in front of the condos. And in Fort Walton, you know, we have got the situation of blockades of ghost chairs and strategies there, because I've been following the Fort Walton situation. But now here in St. Pete Beach, we're seeing the same thing, where we're getting these, the hotel will have the regular chairs over in one spot and the alcohol zone and then another area. Lots of these things. Lots of things out on the beach, even roped in areas for zip lines. They're advertised as assets. You know, things to, you know, big areas of the beach marked off for the water park. But they're charging $15 per chair or $45 for 2 chairs and an umbrella. And the city charges in their business tax receipts only about $200 per property per year. So this just seems like a big dichotomy. And then the deeds for these properties say that, you know, they have an exception that says public use is expected. And yet we need to think about the property owners of the inland properties, because they went and bought their condos where it said there was 8 miles of Gulf beaches and 26 miles on the Gulf, and from Paso Road up to Upham were public. And we've had city meetings where people have said the beach is public, will always be public. Yet we've had times when they say the sheriff is going to start, you know, enforcing the other things. So here's my questions to you. How do we avoid taxation with representation? What do we do? What could be a way to effectively do this so that we could, you know, make sure everybody's treated fairly? And it doesn't mean property tax. You know a lot about this world. Thank you.
Thank you. You want to take this one? Let's get you an easy one right off the bat.
Yeah, this one we could spend a lot of time in a courtroom over, right? And a lot of time has been spent in courtrooms trying to ferret a lot of those things out. So we've been trying to work on projects. You know, our beaches are really challenging. We've got erosion control lines in some areas we don't. Some areas have accepted renourishment, some have not, and are fighting the fact that their erosion control line in their jurisdiction never really became effective because we never accepted nourishment. We've got legal descriptions that read out to mean high water, others that don't, that just read to a rear platted boundary. And I totally understand the gentleman's issues and concerns, and it's one of mine as well, but it is certainly not an easily solved puzzle. There's a lot of moving parts, and you almost have to take a case-by-case approach to each one. And I certainly can't go out and start counting beach chairs, and we don't have the manpower or resources to do that type of an effort. You know, we're looking at mass appraisal type things, and we're trying to get as accurate as we can for the purposes. But the majority of the value of these parcels is sitting back where the density lies, and that's where the real driver of value is, as opposed, you know, obviously they're beachfront properties, so that's baked into the fact that these parcels are where they're at. So some of those ancillary amenities and that stuff gets captured back up in the ancillary revenues when we're doing income approaches on these hotel properties and things like that. So it's not that it's just disappearing, or you know, obviously there's always that discussion about customary use and where that line is along the beachfront. That's outside of my scope of expertise, and but I'm certainly happy to, you know, if anybody wants to come in and look at any of that stuff or have more questions, certainly happy to do whatever we can within our lane.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. I have no further public comments.
Okay. Well, Mr. Twitty, it looks like you're off the hook. Well, we wanted to thank you very much for coming out tonight. Thank you for Commissioner Robinson for setting this up today. Just thank you for all that you've done for us in the county, and especially the last couple of years. So you have our gratitude for that. Thank you so much.
And your website's phenomenal. I mean, it's easy to get around. I appreciate that. And I did do one of the educational seminars and had to do it actually ended up, instead of doing it live, I ended up doing it as a taped, right? We watched it. I know. I shouldn't admit what happened, but my operating software is so old on my one personal laptop, I couldn't get on it.
I knew you could go to the.
So, yeah. Yeah.
Good.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Glad you found value in it.
Yeah.
We try to pack a lot in those
Yeah.
presentations, so
Yep. All right. Thank you very much.
thank you.
All right. Next, we have a presentation by the Dune Savers, or for the Dune Savers.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Mandy Edmonds, Resident Services Director. I'm here tonight to introduce Nancy Stevens from the Dune Savers Group. Nancy and the Dune Savers are a wonderful group of community volunteers who have been working very hard in our dunes to try to get everything back into tip-top shape, all the vegetation. They've been putting in a lot of hours, and they have done a lot of really good things for us. So Nancy's here tonight to kind of give a recap of 2025 and what we can look forward to in 2026. So Nancy.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. Sorry. Well, thank you, everyone. Whew. Sorry, just, okay. We are so glad we were invited to present today our 2025 Dune Savers Annual Review and Vision Presentation. This is our chance to reflect on the incredible work we've done together in 2025 and to share our goals and plans for 2026. Whether, sorry, you've, sorry, a second. I just,
Nancy, you want to take a second?
It's just not a big deal. I know, sorry. Whether you volunteered, donated, or partnered with us, or simply supported our mission from afar, thank you. Your attention shows your commitment to protecting our native coastal dunes, and we're excited to walk you through the progress we've made and the direction we're heading. Okay. Wait. Oh, this little guy. Okay, just that. Okay, all right. All right. At Dune Savers, our mission is simple but powerful: to preserve and protect coastal dune ecosystems. These dunes are more than just sand. They're living systems that support wildlife, protect infrastructure, and define the character of our beaches. We work closely with the City of St. Pete Beach to ensure our efforts align with the environmental guidelines and community needs. Our trained leaders identify invasive species, volunteers remove them by hand, and help restore native plant communities. We meet twice a week for an hour at a time, proving that small, consistent efforts can create meaningful change. We do this work because dunes are essential to the health and safety of our coastline. Native plants like sea oats, sea grapes, and dune sunflower hold sand in place, preventing erosion and protecting nearby homes and infrastructure. These dunes also support wildlife, from nesting sea turtles to shorebirds to pollinators. After the storms Helene and Milton, we've seen firsthand how resilient dunes can be when they're healthy. Protecting dunes means protecting our community, our wildlife, and the natural beauty that makes St. Pete Beach so special. 2025 was a year of meaningful progress. We saw comebacks in plant life, wildlife, and dune structure, all thanks to the dedication of our volunteers and partners and Mother Nature. This year wasn't just about numbers, it was also about momentum. We strengthened relationships, expanded our reach, and saw the dunes respond positively to our efforts. There's a nice before and after of some Brazilian pepper tree completely removed, and then you can see the sea grapes behind there coming out. It's inspiring to see what a community can accomplish when we work together. Our volunteers are the heart of Dune Savers. In 2025, they contributed over 835 hours directly in the dunes, pulling invasives, planting natives, clearing storm debris, and caring for the landscape. Another 155 hours were spent behind the scenes organizing events, tracking progress, scouting next work sites, and coordinating communication. We had 55 individual volunteers this year, each bringing their own passion and energy. Their dedication is what makes this work possible, and we're deeply grateful for every one of them. See a few familiar faces up there? Okay. Okay. Okay, invasive species are one of the biggest threats to our dune health. This year, we removed 546 totters. Those are the large trash cans on wheels, about 7,000 cubic feet of invasive plants and trash. We tackled major invasive trees like Brazilian pepper trees, lead trees, and carrot woods, removing not just the canopy, but the roots to prevent regrowth. We also removed a long list of smaller invasives that spread quickly and choke out native plants. Every invasive removed creates space for native species to thrive and for dunes to rebuild naturally. Our work spanned the public and private beaches across the island. We focused on Passaquarel, County Beach, Upham Beach, and the Don Cesar property beaches, areas that needed significant restoration. In total, we completed a full pass on approximately 14 acres, removing invasives and trash and preparing the dunes for native plantings. This is a major milestone for volunteer-driven effort, and it sets the stage for even more progress in 2026. Thanks to generous donations, we planted over 500 native plants this year. Each species was carefully selected for its ecological role and placed where it naturally thrives. These plants stabilize stand, support wildlife, and help dunes rebuild after storms. Seeing these plants take root and flourish is one of the most rewarding parts of our work. After the storms of 2024, we saw encouraging signs of recovery. Native plants like sea oats and sea grapes returned, wildlife reappeared, and dunes began reforming naturally. The removal of post-hurricane vehicle traffic from dune areas made a significant difference. We even saw tide pools appear and close, a sign of natural dune dynamics. And perhaps most exciting, we had record turtle nests this year. These are all indicators of a healthy, recovering ecosystem. Our partnerships strengthened in 2025. The City of St. Pete Beach continued to be an essential partner, providing guidance, permits, supplies, and support. The Don Cesar Hotel donated the removal of more than 50 Brazilian pepper trees, a huge contribution to the dune health. We also worked with beachfront homeowners and neighbors to share best practices and educate about native plants on their private beach, meeting and talking with neighbors, residents, and visitors to the island too. These collaborations amplify the impact and build a stronger community. As we look to 2026, our mission remains the same: protect and restore. We'll continue removing invasives, planting natives, and maintaining healthy dune systems. We're committed to keeping access paths clear and preventing new paths from forming. Our goal is to create a notably native dune ecosystem, one that reflects the natural beauty and biodiversity of Florida's coastline. Our 2026 plan is ambitious but achievable. We'll continue large-scale invasive removal, including the roots of 50 Brazilian pepper trees. We aim to complete a full pass across the entire island for the areas we were able to access. As donations come in, we'll obtain and plant more native species in the right places. Currently, we have open donations for the 23rd Avenue public beach access and for plantings at 3 private property dunes. We'll maintain public access paths to protect emerging plants and wildlife and we hope to expand our efforts citywide, creating a comprehensive invasive removal plan. Even if you can't join workdays, there are many ways to help. Staying on designated paths and walkovers protects emerging plants and prevents erosion. Picking up trash, even one extra piece, makes a difference. Reporting invasive plants and trees helps us respond quickly. And please don't toss house plants or clippings into the dunes. They will become invasive. Learning about native plants and donating to support our work are also powerful ways to contribute. We remain committed to maintaining a healthy and native dune ecosystem. Our dunes make St. Pete Beach a special place, a place worth protecting. Thank you to everyone who supported us this year, and thank you to the city for making this work possible. Camden and Camden's team, especially Chad and Def, I'd like to thank them. We're excited for what 2026 will bring and hope you'll continue to be part of this journey. Together we protect what we love. Thank you for your time, your support, and your commitment to protecting our coastal dunes. If you'd like to get involved, we are listed on City of St. Pete Beach's website, or you can visit dunesavers.org. We're happy to answer any questions you may have. Your curiosity and engagement help strengthen our mission and our community. Okay, so on that, any questions?
Hi, Nancy. Thanks for coming out tonight.
Thanks.
Thank you for the work that you do.
Thanks. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Maldonado?
Just thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So,
Yeah, and if you want to join them, they're out every Friday and
I'm sorry, every Monday and Friday, 7:30 to 8:30 or more.
yes. And you will be shocked to see how much they can do in just 1 hour when they have a group of 10, 15, 20 people. As you saw, 7,000. That's a lot. So thank you so much for everything you do. All right, next we have a presentation on the permit process update.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Laura Canary, Community Development Director. This evening, myself and Candace Galloway, the Innovation and Technology Director, are going to tag team the presentation. I'm going to start by going over what we've already accomplished and completed since our January update, and then I'm going to hand it over to Candace to go into the 91 days to June 1st roadmap, and then she'll kick it back over to me to talk about next steps. So beginning with what we've completed to date, we've conducted the volunteer exit interviews with the members that volunteered with community development. Those were extremely helpful, and we really got some really good information and saw some trends, and so we've used that information to basically inform our process enhancements. We also have repurposed that survey and kind of repackaged it to go out to our internal stakeholders, so in the community development department as well as those other disciplinary areas that touch the permit process, so that again we can just start to synthesize and identify trends and then continuously improve. For the establishing the standards for communication, that has been rolled into the community development customer service standards, so those are in place and being implemented. For servicing same-day permits, so this is a little bit of a tricky one because pre-storm we were actually, already issuing what we would consider, same-day or express permits. Obviously, the storms changed that, and so where we're at now, there are a number of types of permits that we are able to, we'll say, do in an express format. But as far as what we realized that we haven't really been able to do up until this point is we haven't really broadcasted that, out on our communication channels of that you can come in now and get this express permit. So with the changes that we're making to the website, we're going to be adding that information. But just for the benefit of this evening, those types of permits include water heaters, panel upgrades, electric meters, and certain mechanical equal changeouts. So again, we say express because sometimes if you come in a little bit later, it may be that next day, but that is something that we are already doing, and again, we'll have that information through the website revamping. Looking at the single point of responsibility, that was where, as applications come in, we're assigning a permit tech to those applications, and so that's been in place since the second week of January. I think that it's been very successful. Heard some positive feedback. People like having just a single point of contact. And again, we are continuously just looking at and hearing feedback from the permit techs as well, regarding turnaround and stuff. There's things that, we may think work, but when you're actually the one doing it, such as, okay, we're requesting a survey and they didn't give it to us in a few days, well, it maybe makes sense to give them a few more days, before following up. So we're just continuously going back and tweaking based on their feedback, but it seems to be working very well. For the appointments with the building official and deputy building official, those are available now, and if anyone needs to make those appointments, you can call the number on the screen or email permits@stpetebeach.org. As far as the extended evening hours, those have been in place since January 21st on Wednesdays until 5:30. We haven't had great traction to date, so we've had about 7 people, that have came in after hours. We're going to continue to just monitor that. And then, of course, based on what we've seen is that it tends to maybe be happening a little bit after the window of the 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock. So again, we're really just trying to serve the community and be as responsive as we can to what their needs are. So we're going to continue to monitor that. And then in our March update, when we come back and tell you, here's what we saw and here's what we think, moving forward. And then, so you guys can provide us further direction on that. When we think about what's been in progress, started but not completed, the consolidated reviews were something that really kind of, we needed to do a deeper dive into that. This was regarding right now when you have a review that requires multiple departments to look at it. What a consolidated review was saying is that wait until all of those comments are compiled and then send it over to the applicant in one review. The one reason that we found in the feedback of why some, in particular, a few contractors that we've spoken to do not like that method is that sometimes you can be sitting on comments and they want to get started on those comments. And so what we've done is started to make some internal changes. They're kind of minor, but they actually make a big difference. So for example, previously we had, if something was approved, that meant the review was completed. And so that could sometimes give the wrong impression if you maybe are an owner builder and not as familiar with the process that you're approved and completed and it's a done deal. So what we've done is changed so it says planning review complete, fire review complete. Again, it's a simple thing, but it's helping again to just be able to kind of, again, without doing a consolidated review and holding things up or delaying it, making it a little bit more clear of where they're at in the process. And then for clear and predictable timetables, so this has been a little bit of a tricky one, frankly, because there really is no one size fits all, especially when we're talking about different types of permits. So what we are intending to do in response to this is, number one, as part of the website changes that we have, we're putting the statutory requirements front and center. And that's the 30-day review and then 10-day review for a re-review. So because ultimately that's what we need to adhere to. That's number one. Number two is that we have these project checklists that we've put in place. And so we think that that's helpful, hopefully, to the applicant to give you a much better indication of the timeline associated with that. For example, it will tell you that you need a survey for this. So you can anticipate that that's going to take a little bit more time. So we feel that with having these checklists that more appropriately identify the steps along the way, in tandem with also the metrics that we're going to be reporting on, and the metrics moving forward and working with Candace and her team, our goal is really to just get the metrics in a transparent way where it's being pulled and not manipulated in any way. So instead of saying what the anticipated estimated time for a permit review is, we just want to tell you what the time has been. So for example, on average, it's taking X amount of days for a demo permit. On average, X amount for an elevation permit. And so we feel that the combination of those three things will hopefully paint a much clearer picture. At the same time, by all means, anyone is always available to reach out, whether it's pre-permit, during the permit process, to just get an idea. Hey, this is what I'm looking to do. I'm going to need to demo, but then I know there's going to be a little delay before I am going to rebuild, and so we can help. And again, it's not a one-size-fits-all, but we'll do our best to give them an anticipated timeline for their specific project. But we're reluctant to start putting out timelines because it really is different and unique for each project. Now I'm going to hand it over to Candace to talk about the 91 days to June 1st roadmap.
Candace Galloway, managing the technology function for the city. This slide was here last time, so just kind of as a refresher, these were some of the items that we committed to and we're discussing with you all in terms of our roadmap for working alongside the permitting department to help facilitate process improvement. And so really, the bulk of what we've been working on for quite some time, there's a lot of detail here, is laying out what I'm calling an operational blueprint, or set of blueprints, set of plans for how we work, what those processes look like, the permitting service map, which is a major component of the operating blueprint. That's really where we're spending a lot of time mapping out the end-to-end process, so the current state of how permits move through the department and the functions, and how we actually get them from submittal to completion. And so there's a fair amount of work going into that. Secondary to that and complementary is a pain point register. So we've compiled and identified, a number of pain points, internal, external. We're using a lot of the feedback that's coming out of the interviews. We're going to use feedback coming from contractors and so on to help us kind of cull this list and define what is important to focus on, because this list is frankly fairly long. You can see there's some themes identified to date. There's a lot of manual process. I think we all know that. So the staff is having to drive things through the system versus the system, moving things based on triggers or automated workflow. So there's going to need to be a fair amount of work put into that. Intake is one of the largest bottlenecks we have. So I think we've talked about the fact that we don't really have an intake process. iWork does not provide for that. So that's really an out-of-system process that we're going to have to develop and/or bring in some technology to facilitate. But there's going to need to be some focus in that area. Communication can be fragmented and reactive. Again, there's not a lot of automation and triggers happening within the system so that the staff has something to go on. So they're culling through that information manually, they're auditing manually, and so there's a fair amount of work to kind of sift through the details that are there. Lack of automation, we've already talked about that one, and notification and follow-up. So these are some of the themes. We'll be able to go into more detail. I think we have an update coming to you next month in more granularity, where we can dive into some of these, but I wanted to raise the themes that we're capturing in this pain point register. Another artifact that's part of that operating blueprint is a permit matrix. So it's our focus to outline all of the permit types and all of the requirements for those permit types and the checklists and all the package and details that are associated with each permit type, and start to define that kind of catalog of information. And it'll be useful for looking at new systems and services, but it'll also be useful for the effort that Laura and team are going through right now to advance the information on the website and provide more clarity and so on. So that's something that's pretty critical to that. And then eventually, we want to get to the point where we're looking for more of an optimized process, right? What does the future state of this service need to look like for the city? What are our goals that we're trying to achieve to improve efficiency and reporting out and getting people's, permit in people's hands quicker? So we're going to be laying out a future state service map to go along with our current state. This kind of package of what, like I said, what I'm calling operational blueprints are going to really help us drive when we go out to market and look at these AI tools. So we were asked to start looking at, other tools and capabilities that are out there to help facilitate the process. Right now we have three platforms identified to date, and we're going to be scheduling those targeted demos soon. But what's going to help us is all of this documentation and all this work that we're putting into, outlining our process and how we work and where we have the pain points. Without this information, it's kind of hard to tell vendors and talk to them about where we really need to focus our attention and what's really going to move the needle for us when we look at new technology. So it's very imperative we have this put together. It's pretty tedious. The teams have been very patient with me and my team to put it together, and I think it's going to provide dividends, a lot of value to us as we go through this process going forward. And as you can see there, if we don't document the process, we can't really, measure performance. If we can't measure, we can't improve. So that's going to be our focus with everything that we're putting together. And just briefly, trying to look at more of a process maturity. We're kind of in between level 1, level 2 right now. A lot of things are still manual. A lot of things are being driven by email updates versus systematic triggers and so on. We're using tools outside of the system to help us, which we'd like to try to get away from as much of that as we can. And we're looking to, in the near term, gain some improvements by getting some standardized intake processing in place, put a little bit of automation and some workflow to help facilitate the movement of these permits through the system, so it helps take some of the burden off of the staff as we improve, and then put some performance oversight. I think Laura just mentioned we're working on some metrics to come back to you all in a collective fashion and present those out on a regular basis, which will help us. And then obviously an optimized would be the final level of maturity, where we're looking to have a lot more self-service, enabling contractors to do more for themselves, builder and owner to do more for themselves. So there's going to be a lot of focus on putting our efforts around more enablement in the community and then enablement to the teams as far as what we're able to put out. And that's it for me.
Thank you. And I know I tell Candace this, but she's just been instrumental in this entire process, and the documentation and her Gantt charts are a little overwhelming, but it's going to, I think at the end of the day, this is going to not only give us, technology-wise, but just overall process improvement-wise, such much of a better outcome. So next steps, we're going to continue working with Candace and the team. We're also going to we're facilitating those, what we're calling the internal cross-disciplinary working group meetings. And then at the next meeting, the building official will be back to present on seawalls and just kind of what we've experienced. As we know, the code was changed on September 9th, 2024, and then we had a little event shortly after. So he's going to be coming back to talk to you all about that and get some direction. And then we're going to be providing another update similar to this, but more in depth and going into more detail in March and June. We are also hosting a building and permitting open house on Thursday, March 26th. It'll be from 8 to 6 p.m. Anyone is invited. If you have any questions pertaining to hurricane repairs or permitting, please come out, no matter what stage you are at in the process. We're even going to have inspectors there. If you need someone to schedule, we'll call it a pre-site inspection, where they actually come out to your property and look at the situation and help you decide which direction to go in. That's the goal. It's hopefully going to be like a one-stop shop that day. So hopefully we'll have a good turnout. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Laura. Commissioner Marriott.
Thanks, Laura. I appreciate the update, and it's good to see all the work that's going into this. I know the whole community appreciates it and is really going to appreciate it once we're really optimized also. So I do have a couple questions for you. You did mention that there are appointments available with the building inspector and the deputy building, or the building official and the deputy building official. Is there a type of project or certain situations that you have found are most important for people to have those meetings with the building official, or are there scenarios in which you would say, gosh, this is one where it would be really helpful for you to go ahead and maybe schedule a meeting with the building official before you do anything?
I'd have to go back and ask the building official directly, but in my experience and from what I've heard from, the more complex, probably the more likely and the better to get in early. If you're even just contemplating, or especially say for example for a new build, that's a complex project, and we haven't had the magnitude of new builds that we've had in the community, and it seems like a lot of things are surfacing as far as even what contractors are looking at and builders are looking at. So I think that even having we'll call it like a pre-development meeting, where you come in and just even maybe share plans or talk to them about your plans up here, that's absolutely appropriate. So it doesn't matter the stage of the project or and also even something that's maybe not as complex, but maybe it's just maybe you haven't gotten the answer or different answers, and it just needs to, you'd feel more comfortable talking directly to the building official or deputy building official. We'd, have that available. So please take advantage of it.
All right, perfect, thanks. And then my next one is really just a comment. You were mentioning how it's difficult to give an exact timeline because the projects are all such different levels of complexity, and everyone has kind of its own individual story, so it's hard to lay out a specific timeline of how long it's going to take to get a permit. And I was thinking that, something that may be helpful down the road, because I'm positive that right now you don't need another manual process to update. But down the road, if we could keep in mind that, something that could be very helpful both to contractors and homeowners would be that if when you log into the permit portal, there's a really clear way to see where you are in the process. And I think that's one of the things that's really frustrating to people right now, is that they just log into the permit portal and they see a little tag up in the top that says in review, and it just always says in review, and no one's sure what that means, you know, because there's so many steps of the review. And so if there was a checklist or a little bar graph that, you know, went from red to green as you got closer to being approved, where you knew that, like, okay, I've had my fire review, I've had my planning review, you know, this is where I'm hung up, you know, and these are the steps that are going to be after that, so that people have, you know, because then somebody could look at that list and be able to kind of visualize for themselves, how long has it taken to get where I am? I can anticipate how long this is going to take, instead of it just being kind of the black hole of in review.
Absolutely, yes.
Thanks.
Commissioner Robinson?
I was as well going to mention that because it kind of falls under that consolidated review and also under that permit matrix, as far as being able to have that list of required reviews. And again, I like the idea of a bar graph or even a checkbox done, not, you know, one way or another, at least somebody can follow that. Or it's just, it doesn't apply, you know, that too. You know, the 3 columns of, you know, if it doesn't apply to that particular permit. The other thing I had was phone calls, the human touch. And especially a phone call before a denial. I find that that would be extremely helpful. And I would ask that be considered to be SOP. Also, I have questions, where are we at on mobile permitting? Are we going to be able to incorporate that future?
Hopefully eventually. Yeah, hopefully eventually.
Still on the, as one of our tools?
Are you referring to being able to go out and
After, if there was something to happen again, yes.
Oh, okay. So sorry. So we have made a little progress as far as part of our substantial damage administrative procedures plan, and what we intend to do, like, forbid, you know, in that immediate aftermath of the event, we have ordered what we're calling permit placards that basically we would deploy our damage assessment team, and they would go out immediately and just place the placard, issue your permit, essentially. And it would basically allow a couple things. Number one, it would give staff that tracking mechanism. So already, because we have Forerunner now, so that would go into Forerunner, and then it would be documented. And the property owner would already have their first steps along. You know, they would already have their first steps in place to start the demo and the repairs.
Is that similar to what South Pasadena did?
I'm not sure.
Okay, yeah, I mean, they went and physically put notices on each building.
I imagine it's probably similar. Yeah, I think that we've seen some other communities with something similar, but the idea was to have something, number one, that could weather the weather, to have something that would be up there permanently, especially if people weren't there, because if they're, you know, evacuating, they're not going to be there, so that it would give something visually for the property owners to see, and then they would already be documented in our system.
They had a red-green, so you could tell from the street when you drove by.
Yeah. Ours is red, too, so.
Also, it's a...
Just a feedback that the core technology is there and already available, right? So we have the mobile printing, if we have to print, you know, permit placards and things in the field. We've got the mobile laptops, we have tablets, Forerunners, Laura mentioned, you know, so there's a number of things, the foundational technology is all there. I think it's a matter of kind of, you know, putting together the process and ensuring that, you know, we've got some, you know, test and learn cycles underneath us to deploy that out, but all the technology we have.
Okay. And then as far as photos, I mean, I've been in a few situations talking to residents that it just appears that with the permit application, a photo or two might help to what they're describing or what they're, you know, it's starting to boil down to how you write your permit, how you know, what you actually say on the permit for your submittal and how you say it. So maybe a photo of what your intentions are might help. Just a suggestion.
I'm sorry, do you mean what the intentions are of the applicant?
Oh, yes, for the applicant, correct. And then, are we considering on this, permit process as far as, my head's still in hurricane mode, so forgive me because I don't think it'll get off of that ever. Considering we'll be coming up on that again, would be anything that we've considered on after the fact permits, or where we're at, or is this the placard idea similar to that? Or is it a pre?
I think part of the purpose is actually to hopefully prevent the need for the after-the-fact permit, because at that point, we would actually have the permit and talking to the building official, nothing would hold you to it. You'd be able to close that, you could withdraw it, you could go ahead and amend it accordingly to fit your project, but I think part of that was, in essence, to help eliminate the number of after-the-fact permits.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Rosnicki?
Thank you. Just to concur with both Commissioner Marriott and Robinson on the information when you go on to permitting and you look at just it's in review. And the only reason I emphasize it again is because I think it's a common thread maybe for all of us sitting here when we get someone calling us asking for assistance with something because they don't know where they're at. But if it did say more than just in review, whether, actually not just the colors, but pending or waiting for a contractor to submit X. A lot of times the homeowner doesn't even know that it's their own contractor that hasn't submitted something to the city. And then, they're in essence blaming the city, but don't even realize it's their own contractor that hasn't sent the information. So I think, in talking with the city manager, whenever I get those requests from residents, then we find out it's something they themselves didn't even know about. But if it was a little bit more clear of what was missing, then it could help not just the homeowner, but even maybe all of us, because I think we all kind of reach out to you to find out what's the status or what's going on, and it might help alleviate a lot of that. So, and then just the last thing was, because storm season will be here before you know it, and I know we all agree that we hope we don't see anything ever, right, in this area, but to be prepared, it would be nice to know what the residents would need to expect if there was a storm and we were in the midst of recovery or after. What are the steps that they can take? Like, what are the things they can do? Like, does our website all of a sudden change to another platform, per se, or a face that says, okay, step 1, this is what you can do, step 3, or, things that you can do without having to come over here in a panic, but know what they can complete, while also balancing permits that are active already. There's people who are doing work, and I know it happened even, during this storm, that were in the process of building their home or whatever it is, and they're in essence doing both, maybe recovery, maybe continuing building, but things are on hold. So how does the city better prepare to balance both things if heaven forbid that were to ever happen again?
So I'm smiling because we're at the point with the website phase where, we've gotten to a point where we're looking at a lot of that information. Obviously, in the aftermath of the storm, it was kind of like another FAQ, this changed, and so there's a lot. But what we talked about and what we're working with Mark on is, okay, how can we maybe hide some of that information, not get rid of it, but then be able to very quickly be able to put it back up, in a timely manner, because you might say, oh, it's not relevant, but really it still is, and even today to some. So we've been kind of teeter-tottering with that. So yes, very good point, and something that we're considering, especially right now as we're making these website changes, and which ones we need to maybe, again, just hide for the moment, but still have in a manner that we can republish very easily.
Correct. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Laura and Candace, thank you so much. Appreciate everything you do. Next, we have general audience comments.
I have no general audience comments.
Thank you. And we have the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
I second.
City Clerk, if you'll please do a roll call.
Commissioner Robinson,
Yes.
Commissioner Ruznicki,
Yes.
Commissioner Maldonado,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Marriott,
Yes.
and Mayor Petrilla.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you. Next, we have ordinances. First one is 5A, final reading of ordinance 2025-24.
Oh, my button's not pushing on. Can I borrow yours? Oh, here we go. I'll borrow this one. An ordinance of the City of St. Pete Beach, Florida, providing for amendments to the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 131, Wireless Communications Towers and Antennas, and Chapter 132, Communication Facilities in the Public Rights-of-Way, renaming Chapter 132 to Communication Facilities in the City Rights-of-Way, providing for codification, conflict severability, correction of scrivener's errors, construction, publication, and an effective date. Before you have for the second reading, the original, I call it, wireless ordinance for your consideration. Later this evening, we'll have the proposals come before you for the first reading of a second ordinance that would further amend this ordinance if it passes. So I think in your packet, you have a copy of the proposed ordinance for second reading. You have the expert's report. You have Exhibit A with the strike-throughs. I think we've been through this quite a bit. So I think we're ready to go to public comment and then take any questions.
Okay. Do we have public comments?
Lauren Moniz.
If you will, please state your name and address for the record.
Hi. Lauren from Pass Grill. At what point do we stop laying down for greedy people running greedy corporations? Do all of our rights need to be taken from us before our city stands up and says no more? Because it might be too late by then. Every week, I hear of a new bill, a new amendment that telecom is lobbying for. Currently in Tallahassee, even this morning, they are fighting hard to strip local communities from having any input in wireless infrastructure. They don't want setbacks. They don't want separation between towers. They don't want us to have public notice before a tower is being built. They don't want us to have public meetings. They don't want to pull electrical permits after a tower is built. They don't want the city to have bonds in protection of the financial stability of the city. This is absolute outrage. We need to stop the bleeding, and we need to stop tonight and on March 9th. When you took the seat as a commissioner, you took an oath to protect the U.S. Constitution and the Florida Constitution. It is your fiduciary duty to protect the residents' interests. Therefore, I urge you to vote yes on both items tonight and on March 9th with our language that protects the residents and our city. The current language on setback and separation merely mimics the state statute and gives us no protection. We are asking for a 30-foot minimum setback from our property lines with an option for a variance. If residents have to get a variance for any changes, if developers have to get a variance for any changes, why doesn't telecom? We are also asking for 500 feet separation between towers. These are reasonable demands. Why is AT&T fighting us so hard on this? If they were team players, they would not have an issue with 30 feet. And by the way, what are these small cell towers for anyway? Why are they going right in front of our homes? Every single person that I've talked to, even policymakers, they can't say for sure what these small cell towers are actually for. We can all speculate. I've heard 5 to 10 different reasons for them. But if we don't actually know the purpose of these small cells, why are we allowing them in front of our homes? And if we're not benefiting from them, again, why are we allowing them? Because I can guarantee you that the risks far outweigh the benefits. Anyway, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Ronald Vigneault.
If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, hi. My name is Ronald Vigneault from Bassagrel. You know, I love living in this country. This is the United States of America, and it feels good. I'm actually Canadian, but I am a legal immigrant in U.S., and I feel very privileged that I can have a voice, and that's what I'm going to do tonight. There's amazing. Living in the U.S. is amazing, allowing me to be much more free than I was in Canada. But nevertheless, you know, we cannot take our freedom for granted. Canada has gone down the drain, and speaking up like I'm doing tonight could get me in jail in Canada. So this is a great country. Let's express ourselves. So I'm reaching out to all other people that are listening tonight that lives in St. Pete Beach to speak up their mind as well. You know, most of everything is good, but my concerns are a few things. Like, for instance, the water is mostly poison. There's a lot of chemical in it, but I can go around it. I bought a filter for my house, and I take care of it. The food is pretty much poison all around, but I source my food from local farm that I trust. The medical system is a machine to kill people. I stay away from big pharma. I'm good. Now, the two things that I cannot stay away from is the 5G towers and the chemtrail. And I think, you know, we all need to speak up. You know, we live in a country where we the people exist, and we decide. And you guys are all very smart people, and I'm grateful for that. You're very awake, and you understand the risk. So we need to go strong about that. And I know there could be some risk of lawsuits and all kind of things like this, but our lives matter. The life of our children matters, and it's important we all do something about it. And I am very grateful you're actually very involved in this. So let's go to the end of this. Let's stop, you know, those 5G towers with some reasonable, you know, concessions. You know, I'm not against technology, but why are we not doing fiber optic? You know, what are the other options? You know, so we don't stop technology, but we make sure we're safe throughout the process. And the chemtrail, I've never talked about it publicly, but this is something real. It's polluting our air. It's taking the sun away from us. And thank God we live in Florida. We have a lot of it, but it would be great if we had even more of it. Vitamin D is essential for life. We're like a plant. We need it. So I just had to say these things. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being brave and fighting for our lives. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Jim DiMartino.
If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Jim DiMartino. I am a resident of Paso Grill, and I'm here to read a letter on behalf of Scott McCullough, who could not be here tonight. And it's a brief letter. I'll read it. It says, I am Scott McCullough, a telecommunications attorney. The residents engaged to help them with this ordinance revision. I wish to briefly address item 5-B, and specifically residents' proposed design guidelines wording separation/setbacks. The staff has proposed different terms that we believe do not adequately resolve aesthetic, safety, or adverse property impacts from facilities in right-of-way. The first is in 132-16, Design Standards, subsection B2. The staff wording only requires that the facility be placed between the property line, and the edge of the shoulder. This would allow facilities to be placed on structures right on top of private property. Sometimes the upper parts, such as antennas or support arms, will overhang private property. Residents ask that you add in a 30-foot setback from the abutting property line. There are 3 simple reasons. The first priority is safety. If a pole falls or the equipment on top comes free, it will fall onto the abutting property and lead to personal injury or property damage. Second, people just don't want these things so close. They're ugly. No one wants something like this right next to where you live. Finally, some designs put antennas on support arms that go out 3 feet or more. If the pole is on the lot line, then the antenna will overhang people's property and deprive them of the use of that space. And he goes on to say, Florida Statute 337.401, parentheses D, parentheses 11, parentheses B, allow an authority to deny an application for public safety purposes. D11F also allows objective design standards allowed under 337-401. That in turn authorizes design standards relating to location and context. Here the location is unsafe and the context is wrong, especially in the situation where some of the overhang will be projecting over the property line.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Kelly Lee McFrederick.
Well, for the last speaker, if you could turn in that written comment to the clerk. Could you turn it in to the clerk so it's part of the record? Could you turn in your written record to the clerk at the table over there?
You were important. They want all your information. You're important.
Thank you.
Well, they're going to read it. Hi there, Kelly Lee McFrederick, 3612 East Maritana Drive. I'm going to start a little bit differently. Mayor, you would have had a donation, but I had to do $3,500 to give the report for Mr. Ralph Brooks to make sure that you were protected with 5G on the EF report that St. Petersburg does not need any more. We have 32 telecom poles. We don't need anything more. That were very, very good. And what I've also done, I'm going to talk a little bit differently tonight. I've been speaking at our neighborhood meetings, other meetings, and what I appreciate, I've told everyone that I possibly can know.
Can you move your microphone so we can hear you?
Because I'm short?
No, it's because he was so much taller than you.
Let me start over. Okay, anyway, real quick. I have told everyone, I want y'all back in office. I want everyone to vote for you. That's what I've been talking about. Because you finally got us. You're hearing me. And at the last meeting, Mayor, when you said, you know what, let's break this into 2 parts. We're going to pass one. We're going to listen to you in the second one. Lisa, appreciate you so much. Karen, everyone's listening to us. Betty, John, thank you for listening to us. I have never felt so important or listened to. Maybe it's not important to me, but it's important to you or me, vice versa. But I appreciate the fact that you heard the people. That is something to be said. And I was very upset at the last meeting when they said, we have a deal. No, you all said, we listen to you. You're going to have our votes. You're listening to us. When I spoke last week and I said over $850 billion per year is what telecom wants off of putting these towers right in. So they're going to jam everything up. They're going to say, you have to buy my equipment. And what I'm upset about is the fact that telecom came in right after the hurricane. Some of us weren't even here, activated in Paso Grill Park during July 4th. Not a good scene. People were gone, came home to towers, more than many of us did. And so I really want to say we do want the 30-foot setback. We want to be safe. No one wants them on their intercoastal waterway. No one wants them in their inland homes. We were here at 32 towers. That's a lot. And we don't need any more. And Ralph, I really need you more than anybody to protect us. I really, really do. They're hearing us. We need you to hear. But the fact that we do need 500 feet between the towers, We don't want them in the neighborhoods. There's other places to put them. We're looking for a variance if they have to be. They can be on top of streetlights, on top of hotels, commercial areas. We're asking you to look at our neighborhoods, our parks. We're looking at our churches. We're looking at our schools. We really want you, need you. You've heard us, and I want every single one of you in office always, because you've been hearing us, and thank you so much. This has been, it's not a sexy topic by any means, and and people are aware of it. It's all over the cities, and we're finding that telecom is making more statutes, more changes to within the leagues of cities that they want to control. We need you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jack Rice.
If you please state your name and address for the record.
Jack Rice, 3612 East Maritana. So I had two things. I said the same thing before. From an insurance standpoint, no different than if you had a gated community that was high crime. No different than if you're in a flood zone. They're going to come to you and they're going to say, is there a 3G tower next to your house? And if there is, you're going to get your price increased. Because of what they said before in the letter, if it falls on your property, you got property damage, you got personal injury, whatever else. I do want to say on a side note that they did move the tower from our house. And we were scared because I have medical issues. And when they cut that tower down, it landed on our property. It destroyed our pavers. It destroyed our seawall. And they will not account for it all. And they won't pay for it. Then they came back out and tried to fix some things. They destroyed our sprinkler system. These people don't care about you or me. What concessions you did? Thank you very much for moving the tower away from my house. So I can't believe we're sitting here talking about this. It's so disturbing that these medical issues, the old property for the Bush estate, it's sitting right in front of that property where that house is going to be. It's going to be looking inside that guy's window or that couple's window. When they build that house, it's sitting right there. They try to disguise it. There's no disguise in these things. Anyway, insurance is going to go up and we got a problem. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Vincent Tormenia.
If you please state your name and address for the record.
Vincent Tormenia, 3514 Casablanca Avenue, St. Pete Beach. With these cell towers, first of all, I have a family member that works for the company. And they are too close to each other. They're interacting. Because I didn't know what the hell was going on with my phone, my TV, everything. And they are interacting with each other. Because they could see it where they are, actually. And it is not good health-wise, otherwise, and I believe that once they put them all in, it's going to be a monopoly, and they're going to scramble everything else that you have. You have T-Mobile, you have Verizon. They're going to scramble everything that you're going to have to use them. That's what's going to exactly happen. So my deal is vote to stop it and get them the hell out of here. I'm serious. Because otherwise people should just put a chain around them and just rip them out of the ground. That's how I feel about it. Thank you. And when one more thing. When we had Sprint originally, the tower never interfered the way it's interfering now. Your calls drop, your TV goes off, everything, your computer goes down. Have you noticed all that stuff happening? Because they're all interacting with each other. And it's stopping it. And if they continue, it's going to stop everything, and you're going to be suckered into just them. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Matt Mucci.
First, please state your name and address for the record.
Matt Mucci, representing AT&T. First, I just want to say, when I stand here now, I am standing here in support of the ordinance on second reading. So there was talk about an agreement being made or a deal. What I will say to the mayor actually brought that up last time, was no deal. I will say it was agreed upon language. And so the language in Ordinance 1 on second reading has the full support of AT&T. And we thank Ralph and Francis for working with us to listen to our side and coming together and really having an open and honest conversation. So just want to say that. So if we're sticking with the second reading ordinance, we're in full support. And if you need me to come back to speak to the ordinance on first reading, I can do that as well. Commissioner, to answer your question, there's been talk about number of small cells throughout St. Pete Beach. I've heard 32, I've heard 35, I've heard 36. I can tell you that in the fourth quarter of 2025, AT&T was had a build of 5 towers, or excuse me, and let me just say towers. Everybody keeps saying towers. These aren't towers. Micro is towers. That's 180 feet and higher. These are existing utility poles that we are putting our infrastructure on. So in 2025 late, we did 5 antennas builds. One that was moved from that gentleman's home is in the process of being moved to Gulf Boulevard. Prior to that, I am aware of 2 near to Don Cesar and potentially 2 more. So I would say no more than 10 AT&T small cell facilities are in St. Pete Beach at this time. So I hope that clarifies it. And this is small cells. This is not rooftop antennas. So just want to make that clear, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I have no further public comment.
Thank you. Commissioners, on the first item, comments, thoughts, questions, a motion? Commissioner Robinson?
I did want to bring out that I did speak to Ralph to make sure that we had a to be defended in hold harmless agreement or in the insurance clause.
We have insurance provisions. They're on the ordinance, page 37. And then also for the small cell, 85 to 86. And then we have hold harmless and defense provisions where the provider would hold the city harmless and pay for the defense and support defense in any cases. That's on page 38 and 40, and then page 87 of the proposed ordinances. We have those covered. We also have certificates that would provide money on construction bonds and removal bonds and removal plans. So all these that you brought up have been addressed in the first ordinance for the second reading.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware.
Thank you.
Just one question.
Commissioner Reznicki?
Just a question for clarification on, because I saw this after reading this a couple of times because it's very lengthy. On packet page 281 or page 2 of the ordinance, it's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bullet down. It's not numbers, just
okay.
dots. To conserve and enhance unique natural beauty, replace, and so forth. But the appearance of the Don Cesar Hotel, the Pink Palace, Boca Ciega Bay Aquatic Preserve, Upham Beach, St. Pete Beach Community Center, Paso Grosso Historic District, and Beach Theater, and the City of St. Pete Beach. My question is, why don't we add why are these buildings or locations being identified and not all others? Those are not the only local historic designated, for the library, for example, the Suntan Vista. There's other locations in our city, and there's nothing written there to kind of talk about what other ones currently exist or what other ones can possibly exist in the future if we were to locally designate something else, if that's what those are there for, because it's a kind of a mixture between beaches and things that are historic. So it was, again, I just wanted it to be clarified.
If you have others that you would like to add to this section, you certainly could.
Again, if it's for historic, I'm not quite sure what it's for, because Upham Beach Park is there, and so is.
These were just selected as representative. They could say including but not limited to, or if you'd like to come back again with a bigger list.
Just included but not limited to, because again, the list could change, through time. We could add something else and, Mary Pier, right? Like, something else can come up that's significant for the community.
Appearance of resources including but not limited to.
Yes.
let's make that our first recommended change with the motion.
Thank you.
Commissioner Maldonado?
Yeah, well, so first of all, I'd like to thank the folks that have spoken today, not only for their continued championing of this, but involving me early from day one and really just leading this grassroots efforts, in particular, Lauren Moniz and Kelly Lee, for just really just being staunch supporters, and Kelly Lee in particular for having that report done at your expense. I mean, that's going above and beyond what any constituent should do. And Dr. Chamberlain's report was very thorough and, quite frankly, something that was critically needed to allow this person, I can't speak for the commission, but to allow me to understand just how saturated St. Pete Beach is with these devices. So I just wanted to get that out first and foremost. Thank you.
All right. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt with the modifications discussed today, ordinance 2025-24.
Second.
City Clerk, if you'll please do a roll call.
Commissioner Ruznicki,
Yes.
Commissioner Maldonado,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Marriott,
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson,
Yes.
and Mayor Petrilla.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Next, we have item 5B, first reading of ordinance 2026-03.
Let me read the title. First reading of ordinance 2026-03, an ordinance of the City of St. Pete Beach, Florida, providing for amendments to the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 132, Communication Facilities in the City Rights-of-Way, Section 132-16, Design Standards, providing for codification, conflict, severability, correction of scrivener's errors, construction, publication, and an effective date. This is a proposal by the citizens group to add in distances to the wireless ordinance, the chapter 131 and 132. This would affect chapter 132-16, design standards for those small wireless facilities and city-owned right-of-ways. These particular facilities are subject to the state preemptions that are in section 337.401. The first proposal would be to have a minimum setback of at least 30 feet. And you'll see that in the Exhibit A, track changes.
30 feet from, because we've had several different 30 feet.
Setbacks from the property line shall be based on site-specific aesthetic and public safety concerns. In order to protect public safety, there shall be a minimum setback of at least 30 feet from any private property line for the pole or other supporting structure on which the proposed facilities are to be located, as measured from the closest point of the facility to the property line. The purpose of this setback is to prevent damage to private property in the event of structural failure and to mitigate adverse visual effects to adjacent property owners. The setback requirement is separate from the spacing requirements in section 132.16.8.1.2, which we'll read next. Applicants may request a variance pursuant to the requirements of section 98-126 at sequence. So to explain this a little bit, we started out with 30 feet from the property line. We said if you did that, there wasn't sufficient space in the usable right-of-way, and the facility would have to go in the middle of the street. So there simply wasn't space.
Sorry.
I thought we had changed it to 30 feet from the structure.
Just to clarify, just 30 feet from the right-of-way, not from the structure. Right?
This has changed.
The initial proposal was 30 feet from the...
The initial proposal was 30 feet from the real private real property line. Then it changed 30 feet to a structure. And now they propose, I guess, changing it back to 30 feet from their real property line. The latest proposal that I received a few days ago, end of last week, changes it back to the property line.
Actually, there was never a change. The word structure included property line. So it actually, structure included.
Do you want to wait till the public comment, and then we'll have you come up to the podium?
Yeah, we have to be able to hear everybody, otherwise it's not recorded. So we'll let the city attorney finish, and then we'll have public comments again, and then we can go into detail on those items.
So it was 30 feet from a property line, but if you go 30 feet from the property line into the city right-of-way where these are being placed, the city right-of-way is 30 feet wide. So it effectively would prohibit the towers within the city right-of-way. There simply is a physical impossibility. You couldn't fit one in there because there's 12 to 18 feet of usable right-of-way from the pavement to the property line. So the wireless providers objected to that and said it was a physical impossibility and was a de facto prohibition of putting small wireless in the city right-of-way, which 337 says you can't prohibit them by de facto requirements. So I thought we had this changed to 30 feet from the structure, which would then allow sufficient space to put the wireless facility within the usable portion of the right-of-way, because we also have 25 feet front setbacks for most residential districts. Now it's gone back to 30 feet from the real property line in the latest submittal. I guess the public comment will come up and they'll explain why they've done that or why they don't think that's a problem. And then the second section is to add in 500 feet minimum separation distances from the location of new ground-mounted small wireless facilities from other ground-mounted small wireless facilities in the public right-of-way. It says, registrants are encouraged to locate new ground-mounted small wireless facilities with spacings of at least 500 feet from other ground-mounted small wireless facilities in the public right-of-way. So in speaking with Brandon, most of our facilities come in without any ground-mounted equipment. So this doesn't really address most of the poles and most of the wireless facilities, new poles, co-location poles. This is addressing ground-mounted equipment. And it doesn't seem to be actually an issue with what we have so far in St. Pete Beach. The statute 337 is the issue, whether we can adopt actual distances by number. It says the city, under subsection 4, the city may not limit the placement by minimum separation distance of small wireless facilities, utility poles on which small wireless facilities are or will be co-located, or at other at-grade communication facilities. So like, for example, the second one is 500 feet from at-grade ground-mounted small wireless facilities in the public right-of-way. It would seem that that would violate the prohibition, may not limit the placement by minimum separation distances. So what we've done is prepare a staff alternative version of both these sections. We've left the 30 feet and the 500 feet, but we've also added in the words whenever possible and technically feasible. And then instead of requiring a variance, we have put in from the statute the negotiation clause that says the city may request and the wireless provider applicant may negotiate an alternative location. So that's different than a variance, because a variance requires a public hearing. Now 337.401 says no public meetings can be required. So I guess what the citizen's attorney is saying is that a public hearing is not the same thing as a public meeting, but our public hearings by the Board of Adjustment are conducted in the public at a public meeting. So I don't feel super comfortable with that distinction. The other argument is that the commas that are in 337401 make it confusing and make it ambiguous, and therefore it's an invalid state preemption because it's ambiguous. But when you read the section, it's relatively clear, but yes, there are some probably grammatical errors that in the sentence, the way that's written. When you read it, the excerpts are in your package again. The city may not limit the placement, comma, by minimum separation distances, comma, of small wireless facilities, comma, utility poles on which small wireless facilities are or will be co-located, comma, or other at-grade communication facilities. So it looks like, just from a pure English grammar perspective, there's too many commas there. But I think a judge would look at that and try to determine whether it was still clear, express, and understandable or not. So for the 500-foot one, again, if we are going to adopt some numerical criteria, which I don't recommend, but if you do, we'd ask that the language be, say, at least 500 feet whenever possible at technically feasible alternative locations, and then include, again, the negotiation section from the statute that allows us to request an alternative location that would be further than 500 feet and negotiate with the applicant. But if that can't be reached, then we would not be able to prohibit the location because of the state preemption. Now, the state preemption does say, subject to paragraph R, and that says, reasonable spacing requirements concerning the location of ground-mounted component of a small wireless facility which does not exceed 15 feet from the associated support structure. So we are allowed to say, I think we have in our ordinance, that you have to have your ground-mounted equipment within 15 feet of the support structure, which the statute allows. And then it was cited in the letter from the citizen's attorney that was read into the record, 11B, says an authority, which is a city, can deny an application if it, under B, material interferes with sight lines or clear zones for transportation, comma, pedestrians, comma, or public safety purposes. So if we're going to do a setback of 30 feet, I'd recommend you do it from the buildings or structures and not from the real property lines, because then you could argue there's a public safety feature in requiring 30-foot separation from an adjoining home. So that if the support structure were to fall, you would have a safer distance. And it would give you a bit more of a fall zone. It may still interact with the house, depending on how far the house is built, but 30 feet from the structure, and depending on how tall the pole is, some of them can be up to 50 feet tall. So it may not totally prevent it, but it might capture some of it. So this is a more difficult ordinance under the state preemption, but we're certainly willing to consider it, take public comment, take council consideration. I think if you have questions, I can address those later. The statute does say if someone does sue and they win, then you have to pay the attorney's fees for the other side. We have insurance that covers up to a certain amount, but not beyond that amount, and it may not cover an award of attorney's fees on the other side. It would cover more of our defense.
So we had talked about in our one-on-one meetings about the 500 foot, and
that is, I've spoken with you, and
So-
I've had
so we
questions
asked
from
about-
other commissioners too, but I haven't spoken to two of you at the same time.
Yeah,
And
no, we
I haven't
can't.
told you
We're
about.
having this conversation now, which is why I'm bringing up what I said to you,
I'm
which
just
is
trying to answer questions as they come up.
Now, so the question I had was, and I'm hoping you have an answer for us today, is there seems to be a very commas aside, but pretty, judge is going to look at that and say Scrivener's errors and move on, I think, or high likelihood, on the 500 feet. But it doesn't say anything about density, right? So you could have, instead of not having one every 500 feet, my question to the city attorney was, well, what if we say no more than whatever X number is per square mile? Right? So that, let's say, we take Bella Vista's a great neighborhood, right? So we've got that big chunk right there. It's a couple of square miles. And let's say that instead of every 500 feet, you just wouldn't have more than 10 or 5 per square mile, so no more than 10 for the total neighborhood. Would that be more defensible? Would that give us, in essence, what we're looking for without stepping on the state preemption?
That's something we could look into. You have the expert report in your packet, and the AT&T representative is here today, so they might be able to address that as well. One of the things we're prohibited from really doing is requiring coverage maps, and they'll explain that when they get up. The expert reports that's in your packet states that it's with these particular small wireless facilities, they're looking at, they can cover a certain radius between 800 and 2,000 feet. Some operating on the high band spectrum need only have a radius of 200 to 600 feet. And most of these facilities operate ideally on line of sight conditions. So it's every neighborhood is a little bit different. I think if we look at the built environment and then we look at the wireless waves that are going around, the two don't always match up so well. So it's very difficult to use a criteria that's used in planning, like density, for wireless towers, because they depend on what's in the way of the line of sight and other obstacles. But
If we did a count, is this per carrier, or are we talking total? That's another huge one. I mean, we should be talking total and not per carrier here, if we're going to talk a number.
I think 337 has some serious limitations on limiting a total number. I could take a look at that between now and second reading, and we can talk to the both sides. We want to go that different direction.
There was a specific section on co-location in the packet on page 283, page 4, that talks about scenarios where they're stacking each other, and that's why I did, full disclosure, ask Matt, specifically to his company how many they had, because it's a skew here. We're dealing with representatives from someone who
Give him back his microphone.
Commissioner Maldonado, you need your mic.
Oh, sorry. There you go. My mic had been hijacked.
Thanks, Francis.
So, yeah, that's, as Commissioner Robinson pointed out, one of the concerns that I have is, when we're talking about stakeholders here, that we have met and discussed things individually with not only our attorney, but in my case, I've reached out to a lobbyist from another competitor to see what their skin in the game was, and there was none. That's why they're not opposed to it. So when we sit here and we say that we've been exclusively dealing with, Matt's company, and I don't like using specific companies at these meetings, we're getting one side. And I did speak to the city manager about this, like what outreach have we had with the other providers, and what is their take on this? And my understanding is that they're not pushing back on it.
We have received one letter from Verizon, and they object to the vagueness. But the vagueness is kind of in reaction to the state preemptions that prohibit us from being specific. So instead of having 30 feet and 500 feet in the ordinance we adopted tonight, we have, reasonable, more vague criteria.
So are they asking us?
They haven't, Verizon has said the ordinance is void for vagueness, that it's too vague under constitutional arguments, but they have not argued that the ordinance that we adopted earlier tonight is preempted by 337.401. And they haven't chimed in on the citizens' proposal.
Thank you, Attorney Brooks. Okay.
City Clerk, do we have any audience comments?
Lauren Moniz.
I just wish my lawyer was here because they're so confusing.
If you'll please state your name and address.
Oh, Lauren from Paso Grill. Also, it's just it's difficult for me because when my attorney and Ralph speak one-on-one, there seems to be agreement, and then we get here and it's like there's disagreement now. And I don't have the expertise to explain all of this. I know, but to actually explain this is very difficult for me, given my knowledge, which is a lot, but still, it's all so nuanced. But anyway, I don't know if I want to waste my time with the structure word, but we never really changed it. It was always 30 feet from the property line. It's a term of art, according to Scott McCullough, using the word structure. That's the only reason. But I don't know what to say. I mean, we have insurance that covers most of it. I told you guys I pay $32,000 to the city of St. Pete Beach, just that alone. I pay $52,000 total in property taxes. You can use my money. You can use Kelly Lee's money. This is what we pay in for. This is life or death. This is not, do we want to build a big hotel? This is my life that you're taking into consideration. This is your life. This is our children. This is our wildlife. These are our beaches. I mean, what are we doing? A line of sight with a small cell at Hurley Park? There's nobody there. There's a Montessori school. There's the beach. Who needs a small cell tower at Hurley Park when it's a line of sight issue? I don't understand. And if you go to anywhere from St. Pete Beach to downtown, there's no small cell towers and there's no macro towers. So what are you doing at the beach? What are you doing in our town? Why are you putting them everywhere? This is what we know. We want to know this, Matt. I want to know what these are for. I want transparency. We have enough. And the nuance doesn't really need to be discussed, I don't think, in my opinion, because we've had enough. We want 30 feet setback from the property line. And if it puts it in the middle of the street, then apply for a variance. That's it. It's just, it's what everybody needs to do, except for telecom. Why are we favoring them? I know the state statute is very restrictive. I understand that. And also, we can push it to the boundaries that we're able to. And I'm asking you guys to really consider that, pushing it to the boundaries that we're able to. Because if we don't do that tonight, all of our rights are going to be stripped away completely. And that's not the world I want to live in.
Thank you.
Ron Vigneault.
If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, Ronald Vigneault, Paso Grill. So yeah, let's just keep it the way it was. There's a foul play here, and this is not good. I mean, this is simple. We keep coming back and over about redefining everything. There was an agreement with the lawyer made, and Ralph seems to be okay with it. Now Ralph is not okay because of the insurance. I mean, this is our life. Who cares about the insurance? Who cares about the money? If you choose to live, choose to live. There's no price on killing people. This is murder. So we have to understand what it's really about. It's about killing us and removing our rights to live a healthy life. So it's simple. The decision is to fight this. And if we do fight it, other cities will join in, and it will become statewide, and eventually will become national, like the whole country will follow, and we're going to be the example that started the whole movement. So let's be proud of standing up, and you guys understand it. I know you all understand it very well. So Ralph, let's move forward with what was agreed on before. Thank you.
Jim DiMartino? Is he gone? Okay. Kelly Lee McFrederick?
Okay, Talia, I'm bringing it down. Okay. Hi there, Kelly Lee McFrederick, 3612 East Maritana Drive. To keep it very simple, what we were saying before, we've had the word structure in there, and structure was, as Lauren was saying, we've defined it, we've talked about it. We're talking right-of-way from the property line. And unfortunately, structure was a vague term, but it was from the property line. It started with, my tower, the equipment was 20, the big tower that's put up, and the equipment was 24 feet from my property line. And so we're looking at, I believe it was a 60-foot tower within 24 feet of the property line, 10 feet from my docks. That would have gone either way, has it fall, catch on fire, what it was going to do. That was the 30 feet of the right-of-way of the property line. That's very clear. If you're talking 30 feet from a structure, that would have been basically in my front yard. So that's a huge difference. And a lot of this was out to what I said last week. I talked about, I knocked on doors on Maritana. There is no one, Bella Vista, Maritana, Vina Del Mar, that wants us on their property line on the intercoastal. We're also talking the health of the manatee, anything that's in the water. I just love the manatees come underneath my dock. I love them. But anyway, so what we're looking at is from the right-of-way of the property line. That's, to be very, very clear with that. We want to make sure that the neighborhoods are protected, that we make sure the schools are protected, the churches, people that are of a vulnerable state, which would be an older population, a younger population in our neighborhoods. That's really what we're looking for, is the value. My husband talked about insurance, the aesthetics. Nobody comes to this beach and says, I want to find big towers on my intercoastal waterway or on my beaches. That's not what we're here for. And Lauren and I have been doing this for a long time, and the amount of phone calls that we get from across the country, across Florida, that say, tell us about your telecom. How can you help us? But by the way, you now have telecom. We don't want to come and visit. People are very, very EMF sensitive. We have found that something, again, I never knew about, something that's not sexy and it's not fun, and the amount of people that are. And we're hurting our own tourist industry. And part of this is, yes, our neighborhoods, yes, our beach, why we're here. We're all, I believe, probably everyone in the room or whoever it is, really believes in our environment in the water. We're here to protect the sea turtles. I'm part of the Dune Savers, love all that. That's what we do. And so we're really looking for you all to protect us, and very much, Ralph, we will be there. We need you all to stand strong. This will be protected. You guys will be the first people, not you guys, you all, we all will be the very first people to have this, the first beaches, the first community. And so we certainly feel strong, but 30 feet in the right-of-way is what we're looking for. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jack Rice?
If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
Jack Rice, 3612 East Maritana. So the tower, whatever you call it, micro, is next to the old Argubus Estate, is 5 feet of the property line. So it's not 30, it's 5 feet. And it's sitting right there. And she already said from our house, the street that goes by Maritana, right away is about 2 feet. Then from 3 feet to the seawall is ours. That tower, that pole would have fallen onto our house. Unless, if it was 30 feet, they couldn't have put it there to begin with. It's easy math. So it would have gone into our dock or our house. We need 30 feet, no matter what. And I feel bad for the people that have already had one. They're like, I drive down the street and look at that thing, and it's going to be sitting right in front of the guy's front window. Property site or line of sight to our house, it would have looked straight into our bedroom. And that's a problem. So, again, it should be 30 feet.
Thank you, sir.
Matt Mucci?
All right. Commissioners, questions, comments, discussion?
Okay, I'll take a stab at it since we've got folks still reading their notes. So, okay, so the first thing I want to say is that it's not easy. I think that people have tried to oversimplify this. At least my constant meetings, my emails that I'm getting from constituents, and then my own independent research has caused me to pause, as many of the comments earlier said, and how do we thread the needle? Okay, because we know that there are things that expressively prohibit us from preempted right-of-way. At the same time, realistically, at least in my district in Paso Grill, as I tried to mention last time, it's impossible to put a 30-foot setback, okay? One of the persons that just spoke mentioned that. So I do believe that we need to establish distances that won't be challenged easily. Now, how we do this is something that we're going to have to come up with collectively. But I'd also like to go back to some of the comments that Matt Mucci read on behalf of attorney Scott McCullough when he talked about 132-16, the design standard, specifically D11 and B, talking about sightline, pedestrians, and public safety. I think that we really need to underscore that and capture that in the language. And the mayor was alluding to something that could possibly be something that we can leverage without constricting ourselves, and that's per capacity. You use the word density, I believe. That is something that's innovative. I think that no one has even mentioned that up until this meeting. And again, to the public, I struggled in reading some of your emails because of Florida sunshine laws. I cannot read emails from other commissioners and things like that, especially when it comes to polling. And I made it very clear to people that please present that to me individually, talk to me about it, talk to your commissioners, get your voice heard. And we have heard it. You know, we received numerous emails, and I will say the first one or two, I thought we had a bunch of lawyers in Paso Grill because they were talking about legal challenges and things. But by the time I saw the 11th, that was cut and paste, I realized it was a well-crafted email, probably with legal counsel. So that added to the complexity of this. How do we come up with separation distances without violating Florida statutes that we know would immediately be challenged? At the same time, I previously mentioned to Mr. Matt Mucci that we're not looking for a fight, we're looking for a partnership with the ISP providers, okay? We know that we have way too much here. You know, my district in particular, I think has 60, maybe 70% of the towers, and I use that term very loosely, compared to the rest of St. Pete Beach. So the question is, why? Okay, so I did ask city staff to give me some answers to why, and to answer Ron Vignet's question, fiber is not an option, fiber optic is not an option in this case. You know, we do have some fiber optic that's been run throughout the city, and that will not help us. The other thing that it's a capacity issue, not a coverage issue. So we ask ourselves, why are we getting so much? And I do like some of the language that's proposed in this first reading. I'm happy with the safety standards that talk about radon testing, RF emission levels, the fact that residents can take actions as well. We're not preempting or taking anything away from the residents. I like that. Those are some of the things that I do like in here. I like the recommendation that staff made about where technically feasible and that there's a negotiation process. I think that that's critical, that we keep that. As far as home rule doesn't allow us to go against state legislation. As much as I would love to say that it does and that we can assert that, that is one of the challenges that this commission is struggling with, not only with this issue, but with Senate Bill 180 and other things that prohibit us from doing certain things. The real property rights shall not be taken away from people. Okay, that's the bottom line. You know, you mentioned specific cases where owners are getting ready to build multi-million-dollar homes, and they're going to be pretty surprised when they arrive here and find that this tower has been placed immediately in front of their house. And I guarantee that we're going to hear about that as soon as that becomes knowledgeable to them. So I do want to work with this commission in coming up with something that has teeth. I think that without distances and separations, that it's toothless, and that it's just a ordinance for the sake of gesture. It will not start a movement. It will not impact legislation in other cities. But I think that this is half-baked. Just based on what I've heard today, I think that we're not ready, at least in my humble opinion, to move forward with anything. I think that we need to incorporate some of the language that we're struggling with, you know, and I will say that at least what I read and what I've consistently kept is that 30 feet setbacks from private property lines were ineffective because there's not enough space. It did change from 30 feet from front of structure to what we're now saying real properties. So that needs to be ironed out. That needs to be 100% clear on what we're talking about, because there has been changes, Ron. And so again, this is my interpretation. I'm not speaking for the lawyer. I'm not speaking for any commissioner. I'd love to hear how they interpret things. But then I would also like to underscore that Attorney Brooks has been having these meetings on behalf of the commission. He's not the final person that decides or says what's going to come out of this. He gives us expert advice based on his judgment, training, and experience. But this is the only forum where we can discuss it and give our input. We've all had individual meetings. I think I've had probably 15 meetings with the city manager on this very complicated topic. And that's why I'm not incensed, but I think that it's important to underscore that this is not a simple, easy solution. If it was, we would have resolved this with the first reading of the previous ordinance. But we realized that we had to bifurcate it so that that first ordinance does not get challenged legally, and that we have some slip room with this one. All that to say that these are my comments. I'd love to hear what my fellow commissioners have to say before we go ahead.
Read what the citizens had proposed before we got this change.
Attorney Brooks, can you use the microphone, please?
You read what the citizens, Attorney Scott had proposed before the change that came in Thursday, the date that we published the agenda. Before that, they originally had setbacks from property lines shall be based on site-specific aesthetic and concerns, but for the purposes of structural safety, there shall be a minimum setback of at least 30 feet from any existing developed structure or structure for which a site plan or permit has been submitted and deemed complete, as measured from the closest point of the structure, which is the minimum distance necessary, as determined by the city to satisfy structural safety or aesthetic concerns that are to be protected by the setback. Applicants may request a variance per the requirements of 98-126. So before it was structure, it started real property line, you know, the comments from the industry was that that's an effective prohibition because there isn't 30 feet. And even the speaker said you couldn't put it 30 feet from the property line to be on the dock. So the structure one I felt a little bit more comfortable with because it would have allowed placement in the usable portion of the right-of-way, but 30 feet from a structure. And then it changed back to real property line just as the agenda was being published after our last discussion. I thought the change was just going to be to add public safety concerns, to add those words. And I had the attorney hadn't brought up with me that we're going back to real property line, but that's what showed up in the proposal that came back.
And I'm fine with both. It's just a matter of clearing the air that I've seen both, and that's why I think it's important to iron that piece out, right? So that we're all on the same sheet. Are we talking about one or the other? And then now it sounds like there may be a third consideration to come back to. You said, what was the last line that you said?
Well, it started out 30 feet from the property line, and we found that that wouldn't be workable because it would be in the middle of the street or in the middle of the water. So we went 30 feet from a structure, and I felt a little bit more comfortable with that because it wouldn't be an effective prohibition of use of the right-of-way. You'd still be able to put it in the effective usable right-of-way, and in most cases be 30 feet from a house in most neighborhoods, maybe not in Paso Grill, which might still cause a problem there. And then they were proposing a variance, but the problem I see with the variance is that I equate a public hearing with a public meeting. I think they're very similar, not the same. So I asked for the negotiated period of time to negotiate alternative locations that the statute does allow us to do. Now, in the first ordinance that you adopted tonight, the language is on page 83. For the 500 feet. And page 81 for the 30 feet. And the 30 feet, isn't addressed there. We just say communication facilities must be placed between the property line and the curb line of all streets and must not be within the roadway recovery or road shoulder area. So it's requiring them to go into that usable portion of the right-of-way. On the second one, the 500 feet, where they want to put in 500 feet, we adopted criteria tonight earlier that says registrants are encouraged to locate new ground-mounted small wireless facilities with technically feasible alternative locations from other ground-mounted small wireless facilities in the public right-of-way. Such ground-mounted small wireless facilities shall be installed in a location that meets the locational requirements to ensure pursuant to Florida statutes 337, 401, 7G and H, the placement of the proposed ground equipment and communications facilities does not interfere with the safe operation of traffic control equipment, material interfere with sight lines or clear zones for transportation, pedestrians, or public safety purposes, material interfere with the compliance with Americans with Disabilities Act or similar federal or state standards regarding pedestrian access or movement, material fail to comply with 2718 edition of the Florida DOT Utility Accommodation Manual, fail to comply with applicable codes, or fail to comply with objective design standards authorized under 337.4017R. So we had that put in, that's adopted now, so we have that at least. So the question now is, do we want to pursue some additional language to that? They'd like to see 500 feet between ground-mounted equipment. But then again, also remember, we don't really have ground-mounted equipment that have been installed in St. Pete Beach. Most of it's all on poles. The 500 feet isn't a separation between poles. It's only the ground-mounted that's being proposed.
Yeah, I understand.
So are you saying it should be poles instead of ground mounted?
I'm not proposing, this is a citizen's proposal, but the citizens are proposing 500 feet between ground-mounted equipment. The statute says we shall not have minimum separation distances between ground-mounted equipment or poles.
Commissioner Robinson?
I guess the question too is there's a lot of questions here, but I will restate what Commissioner Maldonado said. This is not easy. Don't think that this is an easy one only because of our hands being tied from a state level. So there's some point you got to kind of take that in consideration for just what the ramifications of that are. But the bigger picture is, health, safety, and welfare of the community and of people. I mean, that's the bigger picture. And that's where I find myself falling back to each time. I feel like the citizens have put us on notice as a city. I don't want to fall into the DuPont Teflon or the 3M Flint water situation where we find out 20, 30 years from now this is actually bad for us. And the reason everybody's doing it is because everybody's cutting the cord. And guess what? All these telecoms companies are becoming monopolies. AT&T owns DirecTV, Verizon owns Fios, you've got AT&T and Lumen. So you do have that, where they're covering not only the wireless, but the wired as well. You know, I'm looking at, as I mentioned the last time, with the C-band frequency, they're looking at you know, getting satellite space as well. So I think there definitely needs to be guardrails on this for again, health and safety, as well as property values. Folks I've talked to that are actually in the operation of satellite vehicles that do transmit C-band and KU band, they don't want to live near a pole. They don't want to live near a tower. Not only the eyesore, but the potential future health risks that are unknown. Now, I'm not going to say it's going to cause cancer. I'm not going to say anything like that, but I'm going to say that we don't know what the potential health risks are. And there's studies on both sides, and I believe, you know, large corporations like I believe big pharma, you know, I just have to take it for face value for who writes what reports. And there does need to be some safeguards on this for the health and safety of our community.
I mean, I'd feel more comfortable even if you said small wireless facilities shall not be placed directly in front of residential structures whenever possible. Doesn't have a distance in it, not a separation, but it's saying don't put it in front of a house. I don't know, I don't think that satisfies the citizens, because their attorney told me they wanted numbers. They wanted minimum separation distances, which is clearly prohibited. Unless you argue that the commas are not correct.
Well, because it could be between homes. I mean, if it's what's in front of a structure.
Small, yeah, I mean, this would say.
Side, you know, like the perimeter, the radius, or, you know, because.
I guess we would be trying to write something to address the comments from some of the public that a tower was put directly in front of my home. If there's a house and a driveway and a house, maybe between the two driveways, maybe that's not directly in front of a residential structure, but it's still there.
Can you also do the lesser of or the greater of, you know, when we're talking about some of this stuff?
Point of order, Mayor, if we could please.
Sir, please let us have the discussion. You had the opportunity to speak, right? So no decision has been made. So how about we let us work through the process? This is what we do every other Tuesday, right? We have to talk about it now. We don't have any opportunity any other time. And so you may have had a million conversations with everybody else. We've never talked to each other about it. So we have to do that now. And you have to give us the opportunity to do so. At the end of the day, we want to be able to make the right decision for you. Sir.
Yep, so I guess there's, you know, other ways of wording this, but to be so, I don't want you to be so tied to a particular number or word. Let's try to talk about what are we trying to accomplish? What's your objective? And then we can try to draft language that would address your objective.
I would think the first thing is keeping them out of people's yards, right? Or immediately in front of their homes, or within that realm. That would be, to me, the first thing, because the further they are away, the less emission you have, or less subject you are. The other thing is the density or intensity, not intensity, but the density of how many there are. But I think there could be some help with historic designation. I'm going to throw that out there. I think that could help quite a bit. So between an area being historically designated or homes being historically designated, because I would like to see a push on that in general in the community as well for that. And then also shalls and mays. Is it possible to change out the may negotiate to a shall negotiate.
Or shall to may, that's, we can work with those two words, yeah.
Yeah, they mean different.
Commissioner Marriott?
Thank you. So clearly this is a challenging subject, and I think everybody in the room ultimately wants the same thing, right? We want to be protected as much as we can. We want as much control over our own city as we can have. It's also very clear to me that we are very preempted by state statute, and we are very preempted by federal guidelines. And the momentum at the federal level and at the state level seems to be to take more of that control from us, not to give more of it back. I think that the language that the staff has provided for this ordinance is a pretty darn good stab at it. I think if we're going to do something, I don't think that's a bad way to go. Part of our job here is also to be stewards of the taxpayers' dollars, right? Because every single person in this city pays property tax. Every property owner pays property tax. And the decisions we make guide how that money gets spent. And I am not comfortable making a decision that is going to cause us to spend every single person in this city's tax dollars towards defending a lawsuit that it's pretty clear we will not win. And so whatever ordinance we pass, if it were to be challenged, I would not be in favor of spending any of the city's money to defend it. And I'm not certain how much of the taxpayers' dollars we should be spending in continued hours of staff time to try to carefully thread this needle for something that's not going to do what we hope it is going to do from the point of added protections, and also, or will be immediately challenged, still won't give us the protections we want, and will get us involved in a lawsuit. So, I think we need to be cognizant of the ultimate consequences of the decisions we make, and I think we need to be cognizant of the consequences of where we direct staff time and what the trade-offs are when that time comes away from other projects that, we've all sat in priority planning session meetings to determine what we think the city should be doing with its time. And I think this is, and I'm not saying that this wasn't a good exercise and that the ordinance that we passed tonight didn't give us more protections. And I think continuing to try to get more protections is a good thing. But I am not one for signing up for a fight that we are bound to lose. And we are not a city that's in a position to take the lead on trying to create some bigger movement to fight this fight. I don't think we're in a position to do that.
Thank you. I definitely want to, protect the residents, right? So, and I appreciate what everybody's saying, and I know there's a lot of hard work going into this, and the people who are sitting in the audience that have been leading the charge for change. But we are stewards of the whole city. So just I want to try to figure out between building and property line, right? 30 feet from building or structure, and what's the average distance? Does anybody know the average distance of a home to the right-of-way, typically in our city? I know it's different everywhere, but I think of some places, just in the Don Cesar or Paso Grill. Actually, Paso Grill, I think I still see a lot of sidewalks, but there's some places that don't have sidewalks, some that do have sidewalks. And just the current building of how people are building to the max, right? We're building to the max of a property, so we're pretty close to property lines. It seems to be the way that things are going. So with that, I'm saying that because it's 30 feet, to me, 30 feet from the building sounds like it's a good thing if you're looking at what the typical homes are, right? If they're building to the max in width and they're building to the max in depth, then the radius from any corner of those buildings would still overlap, the buildings next to each other, right? So in that case, in my mind, it's seeming to be that the higher percentage of homes without knowing the percentage of homes in the city would be covered in not having any type of facility in front of their home, just because of the way the city is built right now, or being built. So that's just, if we knew the average, it would help. I know there might be some outliers out there, maybe. Again, just driving around town and seeing the homes in all our different districts, seems like most of them are being built that way. Definitely want to add the health, visual, and aesthetics. Having that alternative staff, since we can't have the meeting or the hearing, but an alternative staff approval, if you want to use that word. I don't know what the correct word to use to get us out of litigation. And the 500 feet, if it's, I get the density, but I'm still kind of seeing that as separation, but maybe the word itself would separate us from separation,
You're not
but
using a distance, right? So they say you cannot say.
the amount.
Yeah, the statute says you can't say it has to be this far from another one, but this way, if it's
How many in an area?
1 per square mile or 10 per square mile, which might effectively be somewhere less than 500 feet.
If that needs more research or, definitely, that would probably even be better.
I'm just
than
looking at
saying 500
a plain reading of the language. It says you shall not designate X number of feet between of them. I said, well, we're not designating, if you want to put 2 of them 2 feet apart, put 10 of them in the same, 1 square foot, and then there's nothing else per square mile, fine,
Correct.
0 separation, 5 feet separation, whatever it is, but effectively, you'll ultimately will do a very similar thing.
Absolutely. So I agree with that. What I'm saying is I think this is a dive we have to take into that we haven't talked about, like just to make sure that it applies. But I think that's a good idea to do it that way. If not, the 500 separation, and just to clarify, because in the one-on-one meetings that we have, okay, I think we talked about what happens after, right? This goes to the Attorney General, and I don't know if everyone had this discussion either, or if the audience is aware of it, but, Ralph, or City Attorney, could you explain that so that we all understand what happens after? I think we talked about waiting for 30 days and so forth.
So what we did with the first ordinance, we wait till you get through first reading so that we know what's being presented a little bit better. And then once we send it up to the Department of Legal Affairs, which is part of the Florida Attorney General's office, James Udmeyer, they have it and they publish it, and then Telecom sees it, and then that delays the effective date of an ordinance for 30 days from the date it's received by Department of Legal Affairs. So before I send one, I want to figure out which version we're sending or what we're sending.
So it could be sent
so
on
that
the
we don't
first
face,
one, right?
undue scrutiny for something we're not really doing.
Okay.
I'm checking to see with the density issue whether 337-401 allows us to limit the number of towers that are put up in a city or per square mile. I've got to review that a little bit more closely. It might.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm not ready to concede. I hear what Commissioner Marriott is saying, and that yes, we do have to be good stewards of government funds and resources. I think enough has been committed to getting us this far. I just think that we need to iron out a couple things. Now, I will say to the folks that are tempted to address this directly that I have to, when I'm sitting up here, remove the emotions from this, and then I need to separate fact from fiction, because I'm getting a lot of input, and a lot of it is opinions, and I have dedicated hours and hours and hours to research this to make sure that I not only represent my constituents, but that I am keeping in mind that I do not want to get into a situation that is Mount Everest-like in terms of challenging things that we know we cannot do. So what I'm asking for, what I'm imploring our attorney and my fellow commissioners is to come up with ideas that will get us to the objective being to pass an ordinance that protects us. I think we have all agreed on that addresses public safety, and that sets a standard that, yes, maybe others can follow, emulate. That may come, it may not. I'm only solely focused on St. Pete Beach right now, in our people. And it's not District 4, it's District 1 through 4, and it's also our visitors, okay? So that's the other thing, that economic development can be impacted by these things. We know that, okay? And so folks have gotten up here and they've told us that not only does it impact property insurance, values, and things like that, it's also unattractive when you come to a park and your kids are playing under this thing. So it's part of the construct that we have to look at. I do have something that I would like to throw out there, and that's with the collective agreement of this commission, is to reach out to our Secretary of Health. Write a letter and say, here's the situation that we're fighting. You would love your support on this, and get our lobbyists engaged in DC as well as Tallahassee, because we do know that something changed yesterday, that there's been recent changes. They latched onto a vehicle to essentially move forward on some 5G things, but I want DC support on this. We're a small town, but we have lobbyists, we pay for them. We've done it in the past. The mayor has written a letter. It was signed by some of the commissioners. And I'm all for something like that. If we can get national level attention, it will also help other cities to start to think of how we can do this. But keeping in mind that this is a fight that has to be fought, but we need to know what we're getting into. This is, monumental for a city this size to even have something of this type of discussion. Larger cities haven't even entertained it. They haven't talked about it. In Florida, other states, yes, absolutely. And Scott McCullough, to his testament and experience, is one of the most experienced people in this field. So I do take his input and I value it, and I think that we need to incorporate some of that. And I would like to see the document that was presented earlier on his half by Jim. So that's part of the calculus that I think that we need to incorporate. So thank you.
Does anyone have a proposal? Because I see we're all talking and agreeing, or we're not agreeing, but we're not actually making any headway.
Yeah.
And so,
Unless somebody else can comment.
no, we have other people, but I'm just simply saying, it's like we've done this now for several months. We've had these conversations outside, inside. We've talked with our city staff. We've talked with the constituents. And at some point, we need to make a decision, right? And somebody needs to make a proposal that says, here's what I think this ordinance should look like. So just for everybody else in the audience, so that you know how the process works, this is a first reading. So whatever gets voted on tonight, whether it passes or not, if it doesn't pass, then there's no second reading. If it passes, if there is a proposal and it passes, there is going to be time to make changes to that final language, right? If it does not pass today, and then we've received a lot of emails from many of you that says, don't approve number 2. Well, if we approve nothing, then there will not be a second reading. So there is a chance, and sometimes it does happen, as it happened with the first option, right, with the first part, where we talked about it multiple times, pass the first version so then we can pass a modified second version. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Just because a version passes tonight, if one does, I don't know. We'll see if somebody makes a proposal, if there's a vote. There can always be changes and refinements and fine-tuning made to it in the next 2 weeks, or whenever the second reading is, if there's a first reading that passes. Commissioner Marielle.
Yeah, I wanted to to say that I absolutely agree with Commissioner Maldonado. I am completely in support of anything that we can do to leverage the voice we have as a city and as a community at a state level and a national level. And like he said, we have lobbyists that we pay a lot of money to. This is a great thing for them to work on. I am very much in favor of you know, us expressing our opinions for how we would like things to change. I think we should, you know, try to band together with some other communities to amplify our voices to work on this issue. And I think that's all very important. As for what we should do right now, I would very much be in favor of and I'm happy to make a motion if nobody wants to say anything else. But if Commissioner Ruznicki wants to speak up first, that's fine. But I would say that our path forward is to vote on whether or not we pass the staff's recommended language on first reading, and then we can see if we think we have any other options in the meantime.
Commissioner Ruznicki?
And just to clarify that what's recommended from staff, because I did want to be able to draw the motion of the 30 feet from a building, health, visual aesthetics, staff alternative, and the language. I don't know what language to use for, I know we're saying density, I don't know if that's the word, but whatever, you know, the city attorney could.
Well, we can do more research on that.
Right, more research on that part. And
we could leave density out of it for now.
Correct.
And that could come back, yeah.
Correct. And then I just wanted to add, because there is legislative work happening, so I don't want people to think that it's not, but we do need the support of this commission. There was a meeting with the Florida League of Cities, Matt Singer, he's a legislative advocate, and John, and he's got a Ruznicki name. I don't know how to say it. It starts with an M. But he's an attorney and policy expert, and this has gone to Tallahassee before, and it was shot down. Okay, so the Florida League of Cities did try to ban several municipalities to get this done. So it's not that no one has attempted, no one's been successful. So I would say that I would urge after this that this commission say, yes, let's get our lobbyists to do this, because I did try doing this when I went up to lobby in Tallahassee, but it was me on my own kind of thing. It wasn't what we all agreed on. So if we could all agree on it, because things are happening now, we can get our lobbyists to help and work even with the Florida League of Cities and other municipalities that might not be so aware as we are right now, but they have been in the past. So we can reignite that fire and get something done. So that's all I'll say. But yeah, do you want me to draw the motion? I don't know, unless someone else wants to say something else.
Just one more thing, just to point out what we did adopt already, on a positive note. It says the city strongly discourages placement in residential districts. When a small wireless facility is proposed to be installed within a residential district, the city shall, as part of its time frame extension request, ask the provider to relocate the facility to a non-residential district. So we have that in there.
It's a start.
So I would say three things. One, Lauren, I don't need to get on my soapbox about preemption. I've done it plenty of times from here. It is something that is a real threat to the state of Florida, to most of our municipalities, something that we've had conversation with at the state and the county level. It's happening, and it's happening more and more. It's happening all the time. And we keep, it's like fighting an uphill battle, which brings me to my second point. We do these things not because they're easy, but because they are hard, which is why we're sitting here having these conversations for so long, for 2 hours now on this subject, for the fourth or fifth time, on top of the 14 meetings Commissioner Maldonado and all of us have had. We do this because it is hard, because it does require a lot of resource, brain power, staff, and I'm not above spending the staff time, because this was brought to us from our residents, which is exactly how it should be in a representative government. We represent you. You brought this to us. If other people cared about it and they weren't on the other side, then they should be here and speaking on the opposition side. They are not here. They are the only ones here, consistently, time after time after time. And so to me, that either says nobody else cares about these issues or everyone else is in agreement with them. Therefore, there's an important for us to address. And the third thing is, if this thing has no teeth, then it's pointless. Now, that doesn't mean we don't have to thread the needle and figure out how we make it have teeth, but it's got to have teeth. And so I would be willing to go along in the first reading to get us past the first reading, but I am not willing to go to a second reading and it have no teeth. To me, that is a pointless ordinance that serves no purpose for anybody. And why have it? We spent months after the hurricanes going through all of our ordinances and resolutions and eliminating one after the other. There were impediments, that were useless, that served no purpose, that hadn't been cleaned up in years. We don't need one more that doesn't serve a purpose. And so I'm willing to get it. If there's a motion for somebody to propose something, I probably would go along with it tonight. But if it doesn't have the safeguards you're talking about or other safeguards that we can come up with that actually have some genuine teeth behind them that provide for the public safety of our residents, then why are we even doing this? So if somebody has a motion, I think it is time for us to
We do have a motion on the floor from, I thought Marriott made a motion.
She said she was going to.
Oh.
Yeah, I said I would, yeah. So I will make a motion to adopt ordinance 2026-03 on first reading.
Would that be the
With staff.
Exhibit A or the staff?
Staff language, with staff language.
And, okay. I second.
City Clerk?
Commissioner Maldonado,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Marriott,
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson,
Yes.
Commissioner Rosnicki,
Yes.
Mayor Petrilla.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you. Next, we have item 5C, first reading of ordinance 2026-02.
An ordinance of the City of St. Pete Beach, Florida, amending Appendix A of the city's Code of Ordinances related to parking fees, removing parking fees from Appendix A, providing that parking fees shall be established and amended by resolution of the City Commission, providing for codification, conflict, severability, scrivener's errors, construction, publication, and an effective date.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Adam Poyer, Assistant City Manager. So, as you know, we've been working on a parking action plan for the last several months based on some consultant recommendations. So, it's certainly a multi-tier process and certainly a long-term process to kind of get all the recommendations in line and to get the parking program to where it really should be today. So, this is one of the first early steps in that. So, basically, the ordinance that you have in front of you tonight, our parking fees are currently approved by ordinance. They're in an appendix of our fee study, which requires 2 readings and a public hearing. Based on the ability to be a little bit more flexible with some of these important fees that we need to update on a regular basis, and kind of both up and down, right? So they could go up and we could need to adjust them down. So in the trying to make that happen, we're looking to do this as a resolution as opposed to the ordinance. So this first reading of this ordinance would basically pull those parking fees out of the appendix, and we'd be able to update them by resolution. So what that does is it still maintains the legal compliance. It improves the administrative flexibility of those fees and makes us be able to adjust them a little quicker, because once you all approve it, we still have to go through the technology of implementing all those. So it does take a little bit of time. It still provides you with the authority. It'd still be brought before you for public input prior to approval, and it basically aligns with best practices across other municipalities. So just so you all know, basically this is, like I said, the first step. The next steps that you'll see is we've already brought some fee options to the Budget and Finance Review Board. So we've been kind of fine-tuning those based on some of their recommendations. We plan to bring a similar presentation to you all at your next meeting for you to provide us for the input. Once we do the second reading of this ordinance, then we'd bring a resolution back to you that has those updated fees based on your recommendations to us after we present them to you. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Adam. Commissioner Maldonado?
Just want to clarify, there are no fiscal impacts associated with the adoption of
No,
this
sir.
ordinance?
No, sir. No fiscal impacts to what you're doing tonight.
Thank you.
City Clerk, are there any audience comments?
There are no audience comments.
I am in support of this. This will allow us to be more flexible and move a little bit more efficiently and expeditiously. So unless there's further discussion, I make a motion to approve ordinance 2026-02.
Second.
City Clerk?
Vice Mayor Marriott,
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson,
Yes.
Commissioner Rosnicki,
Yes.
Commissioner Maldonado,
Yes.
Mayor Petrola,
Yes.
motion carries.
Next, we have action item 6A, acceptance of the capital projects prioritization tool. Devin, you're up.
Good evening, Mayor and Commission. First of all, thank you for letting me participate with you all virtually. If you can hear, I'm a little bit under the weather and certainly not something that I wanted to share with you all. So before you this evening, I'm presenting a capital improvement projects prioritization tool. I'm Devin Schmidt, I'm the Finance Director. So this tool has been taken through our Finance Budget Review Committee. What we're looking to accomplish with our new matrix is following a Government Finance Officers Association aligned decision support tool when we're looking at any of our capital projects. It provides us a consistent way for the city of St. Pete Beach to score, compare, and rank any of our capital improvement projects using a criteria that is both objective as well as repeatable. The matrix also ensures that our capital investments are aligning with the city's strategic roadmap that the Commission had put forward with staff's input, as well as the community priorities, and it really helps us manage our risks, support our resiliency efforts, and meet regulatory obligations and make the best use of our limited financial resources. So by applying this same framework across all of our projects, this tool really creates an opportunity for consistency as well as transparency for our capital projects budget process. So what we're looking at with how the tool was, how it's used. So first and foremost, that the city establishes relative importance by assigning weights and totaling those each up to 100. Some of the after-action feedback that I heard through the budget process from both the Commission and the Finance Budget Review Committee was an ability to have a defined matrix of how we're scoring our capital projects. The beauty of having the weights be flexible is that in a given year, if the Commission decides after recovery that maybe resiliency isn't as important, we can shift as staff and provide a different opportunity for each one of those projects to run through a different criteria there. So when we're taking kind of a deeper dive into what the actual criteria used, so we'd be looking at some different categories, and that first one we have there is health and safety, which falls under our reliable infrastructure. This is really looking at taking some immediate life safety risks where we're asking, does this project reduce the chance of injury, loss of life, or an emergency access failure? So something like seawalls, roads, emergency routes. It scores high regardless of any aesthetics or timing. Second, there is regulatory mandate. So this captures what we must do if we have a law that's either state or federal, if there's an audit finding or interlocal obligations that aren't optional. This also creates a high weighting for that criteria. Looking at our asset condition and risk, this is also within our reliable infrastructure. This is really considering what is our failure risk, so not just the age of the infrastructure, but we're looking at the likelihood and the consequences of failure. So the intent would be to protect what we already own and avoid any expensive emergency by addressing high-risk assets before they break. Moving down to community prosperity, this is measuring quality of life and any sort of community benefit. So this is more any increases to access, livability, any neighborhood impacts. These projects matter, but they're intentionally weighted below safety compliance and asset protection to ensure that we're building a stable foundation and repairing some of our assets that are in that kind of recovery or resiliency phase. Looking at recovery and resiliency, this is a focus on flood mitigation, coastal resilience, and these projects that really reduce the disaster impacts or speed up a recovery are going to score higher as well because they're protecting our long-term service continuity especially as a coastal community. Economic and smart growth. This is really an emphasis about well-planned growth. Again, that is underscored compared to our other criteria around health, safety, regulatory, and asset. And then our next items that I have here, I would consider these more of supporting factors. So these really fall up under our operational excellence. So when we're looking at life cycle and operations and maintenance, this is considering, is there cost savings if we replace the asset versus continuing to do a break fix? Do we have funding leverage or restrictions? Do we have opportunities where we have grants that we need to complete the project so that we're not at risk of losing that grant? Project readiness. This is an area where if the project is shovel ready, we'd rather go ahead and move on that project quickly. And then bundling and coordination. So this is looking at taking any coordinated efforts where we're able to align our utilities or streets projects just to reduce disruption and cost to our citizens, and have a reduction in cost there when we're looking at mobilization and things of that nature. So those are the criteria, the description, and then some of the scoring guidance that we looked at as we were formulating this matrix. So with having a weight assigned to each one of these categories, it puts the importance for each factor. As I discussed previously, what we're looking at and what we're really treating this prioritization as is more of a philosophy and not just a math exercise for us to consider projects. So the weights are intentionally put around safety, any legal obligations, asset protection, and resiliency projects first, which gives us the opportunity to make sure that we stay compliant, protect what we own, and prepare for any future risks that the city might see. You'll see on the column where we have those recommended weights, the Finance Budget Review Committee did recommend that we increase health and safety, regulatory mandate, as well as bundling and coordination for consideration this evening. So what we'd be asking for from Commission at this point is acceptance that we can utilize this capital projects prioritization in our fiscal year 2027 budget. And with that, I can pause and answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Devin. Questions, comments? Commissioner Robinson?
This does have a funded versus unfunded aspect to it, correct? I mean, I see, what is it, the funding aspect here under the criteria used in the matrix?
So when we're looking at any of the funding, what this is looking at is if we've secured any external funding, so greater than 50% would put us at a 5 there. If we have not secured, or if it's that takes us down to a 4 if it's less than 50%, or if we have the opportunity where it kind of falls in that likely or unlikely and it's going to be funded by city funds, that would take the ranking to a lower position for the project.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear on that because there's a lot of statements being made out there in regards to our revenue and our CIP projects, and whether they're, I think there's a misconception of what is out there, that what we have that's funded and not funded from our revenue sources. So I'm very concerned about that. I mean, there's, statements being said that our revenue repeats itself, the same revenue repeats itself yearly. So I just want to be clear on that, our revenue does fluctuate, and some is carryover from previous years, and some is not. And we do have a large responsibility here for CIP projects that are coming up to get us back to where we need to be. I just want to make sure that it's clear out there to the public on what's funded and what's not funded, and where we stand on that in the community versus our revenue. I think there's a big misconception out there, and there's statements being made and assumptions that are being made that are not correct. So having this tool, and if it's going to say whether it's funded, unfunded, or what the possibility is, I think that definitely would help.
Yeah, so what this tool does is it doesn't establish that anything's funded. What it does is, so we have two essentially planning tools we're using. This is the one that helps us rank the projects and gives us the criteria to put them in levels of importance. And then there's the capital improvement plan that establishes all the things we need to do, but the only funding that's available or identified in the capital improvement plan is the current fiscal year. So as you stated, Commissioner, that's current funding that we've secured, allocations from ad valorem, gas tax, grants, and then the out years are not funded other than recurring Pinellas, penny for Pinellas money that we know is projected. So those are like ongoing grants, but anything else has not been allocated yet. So that's when you see the deficits in the out years, that we have to identify the funding once we do the budget, and this matrix is going to help us say, okay, once we've covered all the operations of the city, for example, there's $2 million left. And then we're going to look at this prioritization list based on these policy decisions, and we're going to come in and say, we think you should put $2 million towards this project because it's rated the highest. We do not have all the funding from regular revenue to fund the entire capital improvement program as it sits right now.
Thank you.
If that makes sense, okay.
Commissioner Maldonado?
Yeah, thank you, both. So I see this as really just, it's a strategic roadmap, correct? And it helps us to align our desires, our wishes, and our needs with current realities, not only fiscal, but then also reactive to resiliency and things like that. So I do think that this is important. More importantly, it helps us to map our regulatory obligations, which is critical. We don't want to come out of compliance with that. So I think that this is a great tool. I think that this is going to help us keep our eye on the ball and keep moving forward. I like that the commission still is using this as a tool, right? It's not the final say so it's great. Yeah, thank you. Applaud you for it. So.
Commissioner Marriott?
Yeah, thanks, Devin. I appreciate this. I think this is a good step towards making decisions. I think, for the last year or so, we've been working really hard at making decisions based on some amount of data and logic, which I think is very helpful. And I think on that funding category and why that's weighted relatively low is because that's for things that we already have received grants for, correct? It gives weight to things that there's already extra money available for or outside money available.
Yeah, it would start to prioritize if we have matching funds.
Right.
We don't want to lose free money.
Exactly.
Essentially.
Right. And so that giving some weight to that, I think, is important because we don't want to miss out on those opportunities. And so I don't want somebody to look at that and go, wait a minute, funding is weighted at 5. That seems weird. Why are we not taking into account whether or not we have the money to pay for something? But that's not at all what this means. This is
correct.
Purely, do we have matching funds? Is there some opportunity for extra funds? Let's take that into account when we're prioritizing things.
That is correct.
And so I think this is an excellent start. Like so many of the things that we've done in the last year, I think we'll know a lot more about it after we do it once, and then we'll know how a year from now we'll know really well if it worked or not. So thank you.
City Clerk, are there any audience comments?
There are no public comments.
Okay.
I was just going to say I agree. I know when I always forget the just that I do think this is a great tool, and like any tools that we get, like Commissioner Marriott said, you got to give it a year's time to see if it's working, and maybe even some more or because you might just have to tweak it a little bit. It's not like get rid of it. So I think it's a good start to help us prioritize for our budget. So.
Thank you.
So I would motion to accept the proposed capital projects prioritization tool for the fiscal year 2027 budget.
Second.
City Clerk?
Commissioner Robinson?
Yes.
Commissioner Rosnicki?
Yes.
Commissioner Maldonado?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Marriott?
Yes.
And Mayor Petrilla?
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you. Next, we have items for discussion. Commissioner Resnicki, Seawalls.
Okay. I wrote down my thoughts because after a long meeting, I would forget. So I'll just pass my thoughts to you all. I'll read it, but you could have it. I think I didn't give you 3. I might pass it around. My thoughts. But it's really, it's work. Pardon?
You have an extra for the City Clerk?
Yes, it's going around that way, the extra one. Sorry, I should have passed it the other way, but sorry, Brittany. This is from years. This is not just a thought, overnight thought, but it's years of work, specifically with the Donsasar neighborhood because of the uniqueness. So this is a public-private seawall partnership discussion item that I wanted to bring up because of the unique opportunity to improve coastal resiliency in the city right away. Okay, it's the only neighborhood or subdivision in the city of St. Pete Beach that has an adjacent right-of-way to privately owned seawall. And it's significant to talk about this because of the uniqueness. The impact that a private property owner has on the deterioration of a seawall is based off of everybody in the city using it. Okay, and just think about that for a little bit, because nobody in their backyard who has a seawall has waste management trucks coming in and out by their seawall. Has, when we had the unfortunate use of garbage removal after a storm, it wasn't just garbage trucks sitting out. They actually put out stabilizers, that they take out these big rods and stabilize the truck, and they press down on the ground. Well, guess where they're pressing? Right next to people's seawalls. So the impact of deterioration is higher on seawalls in this neighborhood because of the use of the right-of-way. So what we had a meeting about, let's say 2 weeks ago, I can't remember now. We've had so many meetings. But we had a meeting, and it was noticed to all seawall property owners in the Donsasar neighborhood. So we met. The city presented with us. We're trying to get some options for funding to pay for seawalls, and part of it that is right away, because not only do private seawall owners own on those seawalls, but so does the city. Out of the outfalls, the boat ramp, there's just a lot of city assets just on this road. So what I am requesting is from the commission some support to bring this to an action item for our next meeting, because it's not something that needs to be completely drawn out. I've had discussions with the city. Our city manager, our public service director have been involved in these resiliency groups that we've been having with the Donsasar subdivision. But one of the things that we were thinking about is to evaluate the fiscal feasibility of waiving or reducing permit fees. And just think about it. It's not that significant versus saying split 50-50 with the city. There is a great impact on seawall owners in the Donsasar. So we want to look at the feasibility, bring it back to the commission, have some discussion on it. I'm going to reach out to other municipalities, hopefully with the assistance of our city manager, that have similar situations. If you're driven through St. Petersburg by Snell Isle, there's over, I think, 8,000 miles of city-owned, St. Petersburg has city-owned seawalls, and a lot of them very similar to the Donsasar, where there is private seawall owners with their docks across the street. I don't know if any of you ever walked through Northeastern, in that neighborhood. Same thing. The property owners have their docks across the street and on the street. If you go up towards Indian Shores after you pass North Reddington Beach, same thing. somehow DOT must have had some kind of private-public partnership with those seawall owners because they also have their dock on the intercoastal side, right? So there are other municipalities that are in the same situation because I'm sure it's just because of that shared right-of-way. It's a 50-foot right-of-way, by the way. I know we heard some people who live in the DUM just on the telecommunications, but it's 50 feet from one side of their property. There's two legal descriptions, by the way, in the Don Cesar, so we own two legal descriptions. One's across the street and one is where our home sits. So it's a 50-foot right-of-way. And some of it is questionable as to where that right-of-way lands, which could be in the water. So without the partnership with the city and having this discussion, this community keeps standing in a, in a holding block, literally, because we can't move forward. And if we don't have this discussion, there's no way to protect, I think it was over 8,000 linear square foot of seawall in the Don Cesar neighborhood.
So your proposal is to waive permit fees for seawalls in that neighborhood?
Correct. If we can get a commitment from the seawall owner, and it's kind of like a time frame, and we haven't got into the detail, but kind of like a time frame, kind of like what we did for the hurricane. If you do this within X amount of time, you would be part of this group that can get this waiver.
So this
to
is
entice
for,
resiliency, basically.
so for the city attorney, do we have the ability to say this neighborhood is exempt
Well, I think
from?
probably not just by neighborhood, but by the fact that the seawall is on joining the city right away.
So as long as
That
we
wouldn't be for
define it in
private
some
purpose
way.
only. They were spending money, we're just waiving the fees.
As an option. Again, I want to bring it for discussion, like an action item, so there will be further discussion, but the city could then work on these issues and hopefully talk to other locations with similar.
I think giving the homeowners an incentive and then coupling that with a, let's say, call by the end of this year or something like that. And then as long as we can legally, segregate those properties and say, yes, we can do it, yeah, I would be in favor for that.
Yeah, I agree. I like the bundling idea too, if there's a way at all to bundle everything, whether that be with other, a contractor to be able to
Doing that, yes.
do with the city work as well as, so they get a larger contracted, the larger contract in general.
Where they are. Yep. We've actually had, so at that meeting 2 weeks ago, we were trying to do a bond, is what we were trying to do, but a bond is going to be very difficult for our whole community. You basically need 100% vote buy-in. In our city, that's not going to happen. So, but the community, the owners were saying, let's go look for private property. So we already have one contractor. So to Commissioner Robinson's point, yes, we do have one that's already going around trying to bid out the project. So the bigger the project, the reduced cost. We also have an advantage that it's on right-of-way. Okay, you don't have to access the seawall through someone's backyard. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunity for reduced costs. And then again, the opportunity to reduce it more if we could have maybe the permit as a potential waiver. Right, thank you.
Talk to those court
Okay, so
folks. Just saying.
Can you handle it?
we can handle that. We already have an item coming back on the seawall ordinance, so I will piggyback off that item and bring the data back for you.
One comment, I don't think you want to bundle with the city's contractor because they're usually overpriced.
It was almost 4 times the price.
Yeah.
Just so you know. Yes. Been there and done that, yeah. Thank you.
I support that.
Thank you.
Sounds like we have consensus.
Thank you.
Commissioner Robinson?
I think I might have hit on this during our talks on
I think you did.
permit process, which was the SOP for making a phone call before we go through denial. I mean, we've lost the art of a phone call. Pick up the phone, make the call, find out, just make the call. And I would just like to see that being SOP for the permit process. We're losing touch. That we're in a age where everybody just prefers to send an email and not really be clear on their email, whereas one phone call can answer about 6 questions that are going to come from this one email you just sent. So I would like to see that.
To be clear, your proposal is that the building and permit department calls somebody
Before denial.
before, not in every instance, just in the instances where there's going to be a denial. Just give them a courtesy call, walk through the denial.
Boom.
And then, is there an opportunity then, before it gets denied, for them to make adjustments to their permit?
I kind of feel like that's the whole
Can we
conversation.
take that back and see how it's fitting into our mapping? Because we have 2 teams essentially working, and I just want to make sure that they can efficiently move that information back and forth.
Okay.
It just seems that there's not a lot of clarification on why items have been denied.
Yep, I've seen it, yes.
Yeah. And that's, I'm hoping, can solve that problem.
Do we have agreement? All right, excellent. Next, we have staff reports. City Clerk?
As a reminder, the next commission meeting will be held on a Monday, March 9th, due to the municipal election being held on Tuesday, March 10th.
City Clerk, would you mind sharing with us the locations of those?
Districts 1 and 2 will have their election held here in Chambers. Districts 3 and 4 will be held at Warren Webster.
Thank
And
you.
the time, because people are confused.
Polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
City Manager?
Nothing to report.
City Attorney?
Nothing this evening, thank you.
You've already had enough, huh? District 4?
My next community meeting will now be on the 16th due to a conflict with the commission meeting and in preparation for the election. So 16 March, I'll send out some reminders. Thank you.
District 3? District 2?
Oh, I'm sorry, nothing to report.
District 1?
Nothing to report.
Thank you, everyone. We are adjourned.
All right.